The day the sky cracked open, everyone bought a weapon. I bought a store. That sounds smarter now than it felt at the time. Back then I was standing in the middle of a packed subway station, while red lightning crawled across the ceiling, and black windows floated in front of every human face. The windows were clean, bright, and completely impossible. The first one told us the world had entered a survival era. The second gave us 60 seconds to prepare. The third opened the system shop. People screamed, shoved, prayed, and immediately started spending their single starting coin. Swords flashed into existence. Axes hit the floor. Bows unfolded from blue light. One man bought a spear twice as tall as he was and nearly stabbed 3 strangers while trying to look heroic. I had 1 coin too. I also had no idea how to fight, so naturally, every weapon looked like a very expensive way to die while holding something shiny. I scrolled past the iron sword, the beginner bow, the shock baton, the flame knife, and a suspicious item called the emergency brick. The brick had better attack power than the knife, which told me everything I needed to know about the shop's sense of humor. Then the menu flickered. For less than a second, a gray square appeared beneath the normal items. Shop ownership share 1%, price 1 coin. The square vanished. I blinked. It appeared again. Everyone around me was choosing weapons. The countdown had dropped below 30 seconds. A broad-shouldered guy named Grant saw me scrolling and laughed when he noticed my empty hands. Grant had bought a pair of burning metal claws. He kept flexing them like he had been waiting his whole life for the world to end in a way that made him look cool. He told me to pick something before the monsters arrived. I asked what he thought the ownership share did. He stared at me for 2 seconds, then laughed so hard he almost hit himself in the face with a flaming claw. That was enough advice for me. I waited for the gray square, tapped it, and spent my only coin. The shop accepted the purchase. A gold ring appeared around my menu. New title acquired, minor shop owner. Ownership, 1%. Passive benefit, receive 1% of eligible value generated by system shop transactions. Passive benefit, receive 1% of eligible experience generated through purchased items. Passive benefit, receive 1% of shop points spent by all customers. Special privilege unlocked, owner's sample. I had just enough time to wonder what eligible value meant before the countdown reached 0. The subway tunnel exploded. Creatures poured through the broken wall like wolves made from smoke and broken glass. Their ribs glowed blue, their mouths opened sideways. The first one hit a man with a sword so hard that both the man and the sword flew over a ticket machine. Grant charged forward with his burning claws. I ran behind a pillar. People called me a coward. They were correct, but only for the next 8 seconds. A tiny notification appeared. A customer purchased a minor healing potion. Owner dividend received, 0.03 gold. Another appeared. A customer purchased 6 iron arrows. Owner dividend received, 0.01 gold. Then 5 more, then 20. The station had nearly 400 people, and panic was turning all of them into excellent customers. Every potion, arrow, bandage, weapon repair, and emergency skill purchase sent a fraction to me. The amounts were pathetic. A few copper pieces, tiny drops of experience. Shop points so small the menu used decimals. But I noticed something no one else did. The dividends arrived instantly. I did not need to survive the battle to earn them. I only needed everyone else to keep buying. That sounded cruel until a glass hound lunged around the pillar and tried to remove my head. I opened owner's sample. The privilege let me duplicate 1 item currently available in the beginner shop, once every 10 minutes, as long as the item's price was lower than my total lifetime dividends. My lifetime dividends were only 2.7 gold. The emergency brick cost 2. I sampled it. A red brick appeared in my hand. The hound jumped. I threw the brick. It hit the creature between its glowing eyes, triggered a critical strike, and shattered its head into smoking fragments. I gained a level. The brick bounced back into my hand. Apparently, the emergency brick returned when thrown. I stared at it. The brick stared back in the spiritual sense. Then I started laughing. While everyone else fought like beginner warriors, I became the most aggressive construction worker in human history. I stepped from behind the pillar and threw the brick at everything that moved. It curved through the air, hit one hound, ricocheted into another, then came back. Each kill gave me experience. Every frightened survivor bought more supplies. Every purchase increased my income. Every increase raised the value of the item I could sample next. Within 3 minutes, I sampled a shock baton. I tied the returning brick to the baton with a strip torn from my jacket. Now every throw produced a spinning electric hammer. A hound pack rushed me. I threw the weapon into the floor. Electricity spread across the station tiles. The brick bounced between metal benches. The baton sparked like a thunderstorm, and 12 hounds collapsed at once. Grant had been struggling with 3. He looked at me, looked at my brick, then decided the apocalypse had become unfair. I agreed. That was when the first elite monster arrived. The tunnel wall bulged inward. Giant hand punched through. The creature that followed was shaped like an ape carved from black crystal, with 4 arms and a glowing furnace where its chest should have been. Everyone's menu identified it as a crystal brute. Recommended party size, 20. The survivors formed a messy line. Grant shouted for everyone to follow him. His claws burned brighter as he charged. The brute slapped him into a vending machine. That ended the first leadership election. The rest of the fighters attacked, but their beginner weapons barely scratched its crystal skin. The brute swung all 4 fists and scattered them across the platform. I had reached level 6 without taking a single direct hit. More importantly, my lifetime dividends had passed 12 gold. The beginner shop sold oil flasks for 3 gold. Owner's sample had reset because leveling reduced the timer. I sampled 1 oil flask. Then I spent 4 shop points on a feature called Sample Echo. The description said it created unstable copies of a sampled consumable. The copies lasted 30 seconds and disappeared if unused. I did not need them to last. I needed them to fall. I climbed onto the roof of a train car, held the oil flask over my head, and activated Sample Echo. 1 flask became 2, 2 became 4, 4 became 8. In less than 5 seconds, hundreds of glowing oil flasks floated above me like a glass storm cloud. The brute looked up. I dropped all of them. The platform vanished beneath a golden wave of oil. The brute slipped, crashed through a row of turnstiles, and landed on its back. I threw my electric brick hammer into the oil. The explosion was ridiculous. Fire rolled through the station without burning any player because shop-made oil recognized friendly targets. The brute became a 4-armed bonfire. The ceiling shook. Every remaining hound fled into the tunnel. The elite monster tried to stand. I sampled an iron spear, jumped from the train, and landed on its chest with the spear pointed down. The crystal cracked. The furnace in its chest burst. The brute dissolved into coins, materials, and a core the size of my head. I reached level 10. The station went silent. A minute earlier, people had mocked me for buying no weapon. Now I was standing on a mountain of loot while holding a brick tied to a stun baton. It was not elegant. It was, however, extremely effective. The system announced that the station had cleared its first survival event. A safe zone formed around the platform. Doors of light appeared at both ends, leading to the changed city above. The world outside was no longer ours. Buildings had grown stone roots. Roads curved upward into the air. Monsters nested on rooftops. Blue towers pierced the clouds, each one filled with floors, treasure, and things that wanted to eat anyone who entered. The system shop remained open. That mattered more to me than the towers. My income slowed when the fighting stopped, but it did not stop completely. People bought food, water, bedrolls, repairs, and skill books. Somewhere beyond our station, survivors across the city were doing the same. Then the system connected the regional network. My menu exploded with notifications. A customer purchased a minor potion. A customer purchased a steel sword. A customer purchased a fire resistance charm. A customer purchased revival protection. Numbers scrolled so fast they became a solid golden wall. My gold rose by 1 every few seconds. My experience bar moved while I stood still. My shop points climbed in tiny, constant steps. I finally understood what I had bought. Not a discount, not a title, a river. Every frightened player in the region was pouring value into the shop, and 1% of that river flowed directly into me. Grant climbed out of the broken vending machine and stared at the gold ring around my menu. His expression changed. He no longer thought I was stupid. Now he thought I had something he deserved. That was much more dangerous. The safe zone had one rule: direct attacks were blocked. Grant walked close and asked how my ability worked. I told him the brick liked me. He did not laugh. 3 of his new followers spread out behind him. They had survived because other people had protected them, and now they carried themselves like conquerors because they owned sharp objects. Grant demanded the brute's core as payment for his leadership. I looked at the vending machine shaped like his body. Then I looked at him. He changed the word leadership to sacrifice. That was even funnier. I could have fought him after we left the safe zone, but winning a battle and solving a problem were not the same thing. Grant was not alone. He was already gathering scared people who liked loud confidence more than good judgment. If I crushed him in public, he would return later with more followers and a better plan, so I gave him the core. Everyone watching decided I had been lucky in the battle and weak afterward. Grant smiled like he had won. I smiled too. The crystal brute's core had one obvious use. It could be sold for 200 gold. It had another use that only appeared inside the shop's owner menu. The customer who absorbed the core would unlock the crystal body class trial. The trial was difficult, flashy, and extremely expensive. It required resistance potions, impact tonics, mana stabilizers, class upgrade stones, emergency healing, and at least 1 revival token. All purchased from the system shop. Grant took the core because he believed it made him richer. I gave it to him because I wanted him to go shopping. By sunset, he had spent nearly everything he owned trying to survive the class trial. 1% came back to me. More importantly, his spending helped push my ownership progress bar to its first threshold. At 50,000 regional transactions, the owner menu unlocked a new privilege. Bulk sample, I could now duplicate a sampled item 10 times instead of once. At 100,000 transactions, I unlocked inventory staging, which let me hold duplicated items in a separate space for 1 hour. At 200,000 I gained access to owner-only share purchases. Another 1% of the shop cost 10,000 gold. That number looked impossible. Then the city began screaming. The first night event started. Every unlit street filled with crawling shadows. Windows shattered. Bells rang from the blue towers. A message warned that the darkness would produce stronger monsters every hour until dawn. Millions of survivors across the region opened the shop at the same time. My income stopped being a river. It became a flood. I watched my gold jump from 30 to 80, then to 200, then 500. Experience struck me in waves. I rose from level 10 to 11 while doing nothing, then 12, then 13. The shop points were even better. Most players earned shop points slowly through quests. I earned 1% of every point they spent. With millions of terrified customers buying torches, barriers, batteries, holy water, and night vision, I received more points in 10 minutes than a normal player could earn in a month. I opened the owner skill list. Then I started shopping. I bought sample echo level 2. I bought remote sample placement. I bought item fusion. I bought temporary category access. And because I had learned an important lesson from the subway, I sampled the emergency brick again. This time bulk sample created 10. Sample echo turned 10 into 100. Item fusion connected them with chains of lightning. Remote placement put them above the street outside. A pack of shadows rounded the corner. I dropped the sky on them. 100 electric bricks fell like judgment from a construction site. They bounced off cars, walls, monsters, signs, and each other. The street became a pinball machine designed by a furious wizard. I walked through the chaos with my hands in my pockets. Every brick returned to storage after striking a target. Every kill gave me experience. Every survivor watching bought more throwable weapons. Every purchase paid me. That was the moment I realized I was no longer surviving the system shop. I was advertising for it, and business was incredible. The street looked like a storm had robbed a hardware store. Bricks kept falling, shadows kept bursting, and my level kept climbing. By the time the night creatures learned to avoid the center of the road, I had already fused my samples into something worse. The shop sold a beginner item called a launch spring. It was meant to be placed under a heavy object to create simple traps. I sampled 10, duplicated them, and attached one to every brick. Now the bricks did not just bounce. They hunted. A shadow crawled up the side of a building. 3 bricks fired from the pavement, struck it in sequence, and launched it across the street into a 4th brick waiting on a rooftop. Another monster tried to hide beneath a car. The car rose 6 feet because 20 launch springs activated underneath it, and a red brick shot through the exposed creature like a cannonball. The system called my creation an improvised kinetic network. I called it the Neighborhood Improvement Program. Survivors gathered behind me as I cleared block after block. Some had swords, some had bows. Most had the careful expressions of people who had spent their only coin on a weapon and were now watching a man defeat darkness with enchanted masonry. That was where I met Paige. She was not carrying a healing staff, a bow, or any of the things people expected a woman in a survival game to carry. She had bought a portable forge. It was a black metal box with 6 folding arms, 3 spinning rune plates, and a chimney that fired blue sparks. She had strapped it to a luggage cart and was pushing it down the street like the world's most dangerous suitcase. She had used the forge to reinforce street signs, sharpen broken tools, and build a spinning blade trap from the doors of a laundromat. Her trap had held an intersection for almost an hour. Then the darkness produced something too large for it. A creature stepped from an alley with antlers made of streetlights. Its body was a moving hole in the world. Its feet left circles of frost. The shop identified it as a midnight stag, level 28. I was level 19. Paige was level 16. The people behind us were much lower. The stag lowered its head. Paige opened her forge. I opened the shop. She told everyone to run. I told everyone to watch. The stag charged. Paige's forge arms unfolded and fired a cable into a lamppost. She swung the entire forge out of the creature's path. I used remote sample placement to drop a launch spring under each of its front hooves. The springs fired. The stag flipped forward. That should have been enough to break a normal monster's neck. Midnight stag was not normal. It twisted in the air, landed on the side of a building, and started running horizontally across the windows, so I gave it a road. I sampled 20 iron shields. Sample echo multiplied them. Remote placement arranged them in the air like floating tiles. The stag raced across them, exactly as I wanted. Paige understood before anyone else. She drove her luggage cart forward, spun the forge's rune plates, and converted my shield road into one giant magnetic rail. Every shield snapped toward the next. The road folded around the stag. In 3 seconds, the monster was trapped inside a ball of 200 shields. It kicked, roared, and tried to phase through the metal. I sampled a flash bomb, then another. Then I filled the gaps between the shields with so many flash bombs that the ball looked like it had grown silver scales. Paige backed away. I told her that was a good instinct. The explosion turned midnight into noon. The shield ball launched over the rooftops like a second moon. It vanished behind a tower, flashed again, and came down 3 blocks away with the stag unconscious inside. I dropped one returning brick from above. The kill notification arrived before the sound. Level 20. Owner skill unlocked. Personal catalog. Any shop item I personally used to defeat an enemy could be registered in my catalog. Catalog items could be sampled at reduced cost, upgraded through repeated use, and fused without normal compatibility limits. I registered the emergency brick first. It had earned that respect. The brick changed. Its red surface gained a gold line around the edges. Its item name became Founder's Brick. Damage increased with my total shop ownership. It could now split into smaller bricks in flight, reassemble after impact, and mark enemies it struck as customers for 10 seconds. That last effect sounded strange. Then I read what marked customer meant. If a marked target used a shop item, I received triple dividends from that purchase. If a marked target had no healing item and suffered critical damage, the shop offered them an automatic emergency purchase. They could refuse, but most living things developed flexible financial values while dying. I looked at the Founder's Brick. The brick had become a salesman. I loved it even more. Paige walked over and asked whether I had just built a flying road from duplicated shields. I told her it was technically a temporary transportation corridor. She looked at the burning crater, where the stag had landed. Then she asked whether I wanted to combine my impossible item supply with her forge. That was the easiest decision I made all night. We moved through the city together, but we did not become a normal party. Paige did not follow me around with a supportive smile. She treated every battle like a workshop test, and every monster like raw material that had made the mistake of volunteering. I supplied absurd quantities of shop items. She turned them into devices that should not exist. At one intersection, we built a tower from duplicated spears, then spun the whole thing like a drill and sent it underground to attack burrowing monsters from below. At another, I filled a fountain with stamina potions. Paige added a pressure plate and 6 pumps. When a swarm of pale insects arrived, the fountain fired potion jets strong enough to launch them into the clouds. The insects absorbed the stamina effect and became faster, which looked like a disaster until they accelerated so hard they could not turn. They vanished over the horizon like terrible little rockets. We crossed a parking garage filled with stone-faced creatures that only moved when no one looked at them. I sampled cheap glass lenses, duplicated thousands, and hung them from every surface. Each lens reflected light, not enemies, so they were not mirror creatures and could not copy anything. They simply let us see every corner at once. The stone creatures froze permanently. Paige used the forge to weld them into a staircase. We took the staircase to the roof. By midnight, my gold passed 10,000. The owner menu opened automatically. Purchase additional shop ownership, 1%. I paid. A second gold ring formed around my menu. Ownership 2%. My dividends doubled. My catalog capacity doubled. My sample quantity doubled. And a new privilege appeared, Owner's Display. For 30 seconds, I could manifest a temporary display rack containing copies of anything in my personal catalog. Anyone nearby could use the items. Every item vanished at the end of the display, but their effects remained. Most people would have used it to distribute weapons. I used it to build a staircase into the sky. The largest night monster had appeared near the river. It was a floating mass of mouths wrapped around a black crystal. Hundreds of tendrils reached down into the streets, drinking light from every lamp and window. Every time it swallowed enough light, it created another midnight stag. The creature hovered above the rooftops, too high for normal attacks. Survivors gathered below and fired arrows that never reached it. Spell users emptied their mana. The monster continued feeding. Grant arrived with his followers just as Paige and I reached the river. His body had changed from the crystal class trial. Dark plates grew along his arms and neck. His burning claws had fused into his fingers. He looked stronger, faster, and much more pleased with himself. He had completed the trial by spending nearly 1,000 gold. I had earned 20 from him personally. Grant saw my 2 ownership rings and understood that I had grown stronger too. He did not know how much stronger, so he did what insecure men often do. He became louder. He announced that his group would kill the floating monster and claim the rewards. Then he ordered everyone else to stay back. I stayed back. Paige asked why. I told her I wanted to see the product demonstration. Grant and his followers attacked. They had good skills. I will give them that. Crystal spikes rose from the road. Fire claws cut through tendrils. One fighter launched wind blades. Another used chains of light to pull the monster lower. For a moment they looked impressive. Then the massive mouths opened all at once. It swallowed every spell. The stolen energy made it swell to twice its size. New tendrils struck the street. Grant's group scattered. One tendril wrapped around his leg and lifted him into the air. He bought an escape charm. Dividend received. Another follower bought a barrier scroll. Dividend received. Grant bought a fire resistance potion, then realized the tendril dealt cold damage and bought a cold resistance potion too. Dividend received. I had not interfered because I was cruel. I had interfered because Grant was testing the boss for me, and the boss was making him shop. Once I understood the creature's ability, I stepped forward. Grant shouted that he did not need help. The The tendril slammed him into a billboard. He bought a healing potion. I received my dividend. Then I activated owner's display. Golden racks appeared in the air, one above another. Each rack held founder's bricks, iron shields, launch springs, flash bombs, spears, shock batons, oil flasks, and every other ridiculous item I had used that night. The racks stacked upward like a glowing tower. I climbed. Every step I grabbed items from the display and threw them behind me. Shields linked into platforms. Launch springs fired the platforms higher. Spears connected the layers. Bricks orbited the outside, striking tendrils that came too close. Paige attached her forge to the base and converted the whole structure into a moving elevator. I rose above the rooftops on a staircase made from temporary shop inventory. The floating monster turned toward me. All of its mouth screamed. I threw a founder's brick. It split into 1,000 smaller bricks, each carrying a launch spring and a shock charge. They struck the monster's outer flesh, marked it as a customer, then returned to me. The creature fired stolen spells. I raised duplicated shields. The spells hit, reflected upward from angled metal, and blasted holes through its own body. It tried to swallow the light from my display racks. That was the trap. Owner's display was not normal light. It was a temporary manifestation of shop inventory. The monster swallowed hundreds of item copies in one breath. Then the 30-second timer ended. Every copied item vanished. The creature had stretched its entire body to contain an inventory that no longer existed. Its core was exposed. Paige launched her portable forge up the shield staircase. I sampled a mining charge, duplicated 80, and fed them into the forge. She fused them into one drill-shaped bomb. I attached the founder's brick to the front. Then I threw it straight into the black crystal. The brick struck first and marked the boss as a customer. The bomb followed. The explosion ripped the sky open with orange light. The creature's health fell to 1%. An emergency purchase window appeared in front of it. Revival protection available. The monster accepted. It spent a fortune. Triple owner dividend received. Then the delayed mining charge detonated inside its core and killed it anyway. The revival protection activated. The monster reformed with half health. That was not a problem. It was a second sale. I hit it with the brick again. Paige launched another bomb. The creature bought a second revival, then a third. By the fourth death, the shop raised the price. By the fifth, the monster could no longer afford it. The final explosion scattered black crystal across the river like burning rain. I gained 6 levels. My gold jumped past 30,000. The crowd below had stopped cheering sometime around the third revival. They were watching with the quiet fear people reserve for natural disasters and accountants. Grant dropped from the broken billboard and stared up at me. He had seen what the founder's brick could do. He had also seen the owner rings. Greed replaced caution. That night, while the city celebrated surviving until dawn, Grant decided to steal my ability. He did not know that I had already decided to let him try. Grant's plan was simple. That was its first weakness. He had watched me use duplicated items, seen my gold rings, and reached the conclusion that my power came from a special object. He assumed I carried that object somewhere on my body. He did not understand the shop ownership, because the system did not display my full title to other players unless I allowed it. So he spread a rumor that I had stolen an artifact from the Crystal Brute. By morning, half the people in the river's safe zone believed my power came from the core I had given him. That detail should have ruined the rumor, but fear has never been known for checking its own work. Grant claimed I had another core hidden away. He said the artifact could duplicate anything, including food and revival tokens. He told desperate survivors that I was keeping unlimited supplies for myself. Then he waited for them to become angry enough to do his work. I heard the rumor while eating a breakfast made from 6 duplicated nutrition bars fused into one cube. It tasted like peanut butter had lost a court case. Paige wanted to expose Grant immediately. I told her not to. A lie like his was useful. It brought every greedy person into the open and gave them something specific to chase. Instead of wondering which stranger might stab me months later, I could gather all the volunteers in one place. I made sure to look nervous. I stopped using the founder's brick in public. I carried a locked metal case. I let people see me checking it whenever Grant walked past. I even wrapped the case in 3 chains and put a cheap glowing gem inside so it hummed dramatically. The gem was a nightlight. The case was full of flour. That afternoon, I announced that Paige and I were leaving the safe zone to search an abandoned warehouse district for crafting materials. Grant's followers heard me. They were supposed to. The warehouse district sat beyond the protection field. Tall storage buildings formed narrow streets. Broken delivery drones hung from power lines. Pale vines covered the asphalt and pulled at anything that stepped too close. Paige and I entered through the eastern gate. I carried the chain case. She pushed her portable forge. Behind us, 30 people followed at a careful distance. Only 8 belonged to Grant's original group. The rest were frightened survivors he had convinced to help. Some thought they were taking back a stolen resource. Some just wanted to share. I did not want to hurt them. That was why I had chosen the warehouse district. The system shop sold containment cubes. They were intended for capturing small monsters, but the description never said small players would enjoy them. Paige and I reached the center of an empty loading yard. I set the case on the ground and pretended to unlock it. Grant stepped from behind a truck. His crystal skin had spread across his shoulders. He wore no armor. He did not need it. His body itself had become a weapon, all sharp edges and black stone. Fire moved between his fingers. He ordered me to hand over the artifact. I looked past him at the nervous people holding swords. Then I asked whether he planned to attack me if I refused. Grant smiled and said I would not get a second warning. That was enough. A small recording crystal on Paige's forge flashed green. Grant saw it too late. Jace and the River Safe Zone security team were watching through the crystal feed. Jace had been a transit officer before the world changed. He was calm, stubborn, and deeply unimpressed by people who thought gaining levels removed consequences. He had not believed Grant was stupid enough to attempt an armed robbery in front of witnesses. I had believed in Grant completely. Grant attacked first. Crystal spikes erupted from the ground. I kicked the metal case open. A cloud of flour exploded into the air. The spikes struck it, and the heat from Grant's flames ignited the dust. A rolling fireball swallowed the loading yard. Everyone screamed. No one was seriously burned because Paige had mixed fire resistance powder into the flour. I had bought the powder from the shop and received 2% of my own purchase back, which felt like giving myself a very small coupon. The explosion blinded Grant for 1 second. That was all I needed. I activated Owner's display beneath the ground. Hundreds of containment cubes appeared under thin layers of dust. Launch springs snapped upward. The cubes fired like square bubbles, opened in midair, and swallowed Grant's followers one by one. The frightened survivors who had not attacked remained untouched. The ones who had swung weapons disappeared into blue cubes the size of lunch boxes. Grant roared and punched through 3 cubes before they closed. He charged at me with both arms covered in crystal blades. I stood still. He became certain I was helpless without my fake artifact. Then the founder's brick rose from behind him. I had hidden it inside the flower case. It struck the back of his head, split into 64 pieces, and circled him like red birds. Each piece hit a pressure point. His knee, his elbow, his ribs, his ankle. The attacks did not deal enough damage to kill him. They only broke his balance in 64 different directions. Grant fell forward. Paige rolled her forge over his hands. The forge did not crush them. It unfolded and clamped them inside 6 rune rings. Grant tried to transform his whole body into crystal. That was what I wanted. I sampled cooling vials and heat stones at the same time. Paige fused them into alternating plates around him. One plate froze his crystal skin. The next heated it. Freeze, heat, freeze, heat. His transformation became a cage. Every time he expanded, his own crystal cracked. Every time he tried to pull back, the plates tightened. He bought a healing potion. Dividend received. He bought a strength tonic. Dividend received. He bought an escape charm. The charm moved him 3 feet to the left, directly into a larger containment cube I had placed there. Dividend received. The cube closed. Grant's face appeared in the blue window. He shouted, punched, and spent more gold on emergency items. Every attempt to escape made him a better customer. The other survivors lowered their weapons. I opened the recording feed and let them hear Jace's voice. He told them to leave the yard, return to the safe zone, and explain exactly what Grant had promised. Most of them ran. A few stayed long enough to apologize. I accepted. They had made a bad choice under pressure. Grant had made a career plan. Jace arrived with a security convoy 20 minutes later. The convoy was not a row of armored trucks. It was 3 city buses covered in rune barriers and driven by people who had learned that buses were excellent at moving monsters, prisoners, and furniture with equal dignity. He loaded the containment cubes into the luggage compartment. Grant kept buying escape items. My gold increased all the way to the safe zone jail. The jail had been built inside a parking structure using barrier pylons and monster-proof cells. Jace locked Grant in a chamber designed for a level 40 beast and put the recording crystal on public display. The rumor died before sunset. Something else replaced it. People started calling me the shop ghost. They said attacking me caused weapons to fail, traps to appear, and money to vanish. None of that was completely true. Weapons did not fail. I simply buried them under thousands of bricks before they could be useful. Money did not vanish. It moved through the shop and some of it came to me. I could have explained that. I chose not to. Fear was free security. With Grant imprisoned, the river safe zone stabilized. Jace organized patrols and kept stronger players from bullying weaker ones. Paige opened a public workshop using her portable forge. I funded it with duplicated tools that vanished every hour, forcing the apprentices to work quickly and creating the most stressful trade school on earth. I did not become a public leader. I had no interest in making speeches, settling arguments over sleeping areas, or deciding who could put a food cart near the east gate. I became something more useful. I became the person everyone called when a problem was too large, too strange, or too expensive. Monster had nested inside a collapsed hospital and released spores that made people buy antidotes every hour. I entered wearing 50 layers of disposable raincoats, duplicated them until I looked like a walking plastic mountain, and let the spores infect the outer layers. Then I removed the raincoats one at a time and fused the contaminated plastic into a giant sealed ball. The monster tried to eat the ball. Paige attached wheels to it. We rolled the creature downhill into the river. A flock of metal birds began stealing weapons from players, carrying them to a nest on top of a broadcasting tower. I filled the shop display with magnetic spoons. Thousands of spoons flew upward, stuck to the birds, and dragged them into a soup restaurant sign. The sign survived, the birds did not. A slime colony occupied a supermarket and dissolved anyone who entered. I sampled dry sponges, duplicated 1,000,000 of them, and dropped them through the roof. Sponges absorbed the colony until the entire supermarket expanded into a cube of wobbling foam. Paige compressed it into monster gel bricks, which Jace used to reinforce the jail. Grant was furious when he learned his cell walls contained supermarket slime. I sent him a spoon. The city kept growing stronger, and that meant the shop kept growing busier. The system's class paths opened at level 25. Millions of players bought class trial keys, mana adjustments, weapon evolutions, and skill resets. Every transaction paid me. Every class upgrade generated experience that trickled into my bar. I reached level 30 without entering a tower. Then I reached 35 while sleeping. The experience did not arrive evenly. It struck whenever a large region completed an event, or a huge number of players made purchases at once. I would be eating, blink, and gain 2 levels, because someone 300 miles away had discovered a dungeon full of customers. At 3% ownership, the personal catalog gained active upgrades. At 4%, I unlocked owner's return. Any sampled item could be recalled to my hand regardless of distance, as long as it still existed. At 5%, owner's display lasted 2 minutes. The cost of each share increased, but so did the income. It became a race between multiplication and price, and multiplication was winning. I stopped thinking in gold pieces. I thought in purchases per second. A quiet hour produced 10,000 transactions. A city battle produced 1,000,000. A regional emergency produced so many that the counter gave up and displayed a spinning coin. The strangest part was that I remained one of the shop's greatest customers. I bought items constantly, not because I needed them, but because every item I used creatively could enter my catalog. I bought rope and turned it into a web across 6 buildings. I bought soap and covered a monster migration route with a shining slope. I bought fireworks, fused them with tracking needles, and created a dragon-shaped missile that chased flying beasts while playing cheerful music. I bought a folding chair. The chair had no magical ability. After I used it to defeat a level 32 ogre by placing it behind the creature just before it sat down, the catalog evolved it into the founder's chair. The founder's chair could appear behind any enemy preparing to sit, crouch, or land. It became one of my strongest weapons. A winged serpent dived at me from a tower. I summoned the chair behind its tail. The serpent landed on it at full speed, folded itself into a knot, and crashed through 4 floors. Paige said I was ruining combat as an art form. I told her I was improving furniture as a science. Then the towers began opening their upper floors. The blue tower nearest the river sent out a golden beam. A regional message announced that its 50th floor had become accessible. The first group to clear it would receive a permanent territory blessing, a legendary class resource, and access to an expanded shop category. That final reward caught my attention. Expanded categories meant more items to sample. More importantly, the opening of the 50th floor triggered a wave of spending across the city. Every ambitious group bought potions, gear, maps, resistances, and revival protection. My income tripled overnight. One person spent more than anyone else. His name was Adrian. I knew that because the owner menu displayed the names of the top 100 regional customers. Grant had briefly reached rank 89 during his class trial. Adrian held rank 1 by a distance so large it looked like an error. He had spent millions of gold, not on armor, not on a legendary sword. He bought information items, teleport charges, monster bait, concealment fields, poison immunity, memory crystals, storage expansions, class resets, and thousands of disposable tools. He used the shop the way I did, not as a place to buy power, as a box of pieces. That made him dangerous. 3 days after the 50th floor opened, Adrian entered the river safe zone alone. He wore a gray coat and carried no visible weapon. A thin ring of black cards floated around one hand. Each card contained a captured skill that he could release once. People moved away from him without being asked. He walked through the workshop, past the public market, and stopped in front of me while I was testing whether a duplicated ladder could be launched like a spear. He looked at the ladder stuck through a concrete wall. Then he looked at my ownership rings. He said he wanted me on his tower team. I asked what happened to his previous team. He said they had become educational. That answer told me almost everything. Adrian was clever, powerful, and completely comfortable treating people as disposable tools. He had cleared 49 tower floors by forming temporary groups, learning everyone's abilities, and arranging battles so that their deaths created openings for him. He never directly betrayed the groups. He simply placed them where the monsters were most likely to make decisions on his behalf. no contracts, no hidden clauses, no politics, just a man who could look at a room full of human beings and see equipment with opinions. I declined his invitation. Adrian smiled. He said I would enter the tower anyway. Then he walked away. 10 minutes later, the 50th floor released its first monster wave into the city. The tower did not do it because of me. The event had been scheduled since the floor opened. Adrian simply knew the schedule. Thousands of creatures poured from golden gates around the river. They were long-limbed things wrapped in white cloth, carrying bells that erased sound. Every time a bell rang, skills stopped working in the surrounding area. The safe zone barriers flickered. The public workshop went dark. Monsters moved toward the tower entrance, dragging captured survivors with them. Page's Forge shut down under the silence effect. Jace's security team could not activate their barriers. My owner privileges remained available because they were not combat skills. They were shop functions. Adrian had known that too. He had not come to recruit me. He had come to make sure I saw why everyone would need me. The bell monsters took more people every minute. The only way to free them was to enter the 50th floor and destroy the source of the wave. Adrian waited at the tower gate. He had forced the city to build his team for him. I still did not join him. I walked past him and entered the tower first. The 50th floor looked like a shopping mall built inside a thundercloud. Marble walkways floated over an endless drop. Storefronts lined both sides, but every window was filled with sleeping monsters instead of products. Silver escalators twisted through the sky without touching anything. Bells the size of houses drifted above the ceiling, each one swinging in slow silence. The moment I entered, my combat skills vanished. Item fusion went gray. Remote placement went gray. Even the founder's brick became an ordinary red block in my hand. The floor's rule appeared in front of me. Only shop purchases made inside the tower could activate their special effects. That was not a reaction to me. Every player faced the same restriction. It was the floor's built-in challenge, designed to drain resources while forcing climbers to buy again. For everyone else, it was a nightmare. For a shop owner, it was a sale. A white cloth creature stepped from the nearest storefront. Its bell rang without sound. The air compressed around me. I opened the tower shop. The available items were intentionally bad. A dull knife, a paper umbrella, a bag of marbles, a pair of rubber boots, a whistle that only worked underwater. Each item cost 10 times its normal value. The floor expected players to waste gold finding hidden uses. I already loved it. I bought the marbles. 2% of my payment returned as dividends. More importantly, the purchase activated the item. The bag shook. 1,000 silver marbles poured across the walkway. The bell creature charged, stepped on the first marble, and discovered that balance was not protected by level. Its feet flew forward, its body fell backward. The bell on its arm struck the floor and cracked. Sound returned for half a second. I bought the whistle. The description said it only worked underwater, so I bought the paper umbrella too. And I held the umbrella upside down, filled it with water from a potion, dipped the whistle inside, and blew. The whistle screamed through the water with enough force to shatter every glass storefront nearby. Sleeping monsters woke up. That part was intentional. They rushed toward me from both sides. I bought the rubber boots. The boots allowed the wearer to bounce once after touching a surface. I put one on each hand, then I punched the floor. The bounce effect launched me upward. I struck the underside of a floating escalator, bounced again, and flew over the charging monsters. They collided beneath me, tangled in white cloth, and rolled across the marbles into the broken storefronts. I bought the dull knife. It had almost no cutting power, but it could separate attached objects without dealing damage. I used it to detach the giant bells from the ceiling chains. The first bell fell. The walkway broke. Hundreds of monsters dropped into the clouds. I landed on the paper umbrella, which had become rigid after purchase, and rode it down like a sled. A second walkway curved below me. I hit it, bounced off my rubber-covered hands, and continued forward without slowing. Adrian entered behind me with 6 unnamed climbers he had collected at the gate. He watched the destruction, purchased the same items, and copied none of my moves. That made him more dangerous. A lesser rival would have tried to prove he could do my trick better. Adrian simply learned the rules and created his own path. He used the dull knife to detach an entire storefront, then released a captured wind skill from one of his black cards. The storefront became a flying wall that carried his group across the gap. He did not protect them because he cared. He protected them because they were still useful. The floor divided into 5 zones. Each zone contained a bell source. Destroying all 5 would stop the monster wave outside and open the boss chamber. Adrian headed toward the highest bell. I went lower. Paige entered next, dragging her portable forge through the gate. Silence Field disabled its magic, but she had modified the wheels with normal springs and bicycle chains. The forge moved through pure mechanical stubbornness. Jace stayed outside to defend the safe zone and evacuate people. That left Paige and me inside with Adrian and the survivors he had pulled into his plan. We reached the first bell source inside a maze of rotating restaurants. Tables floated upside down. Kitchens spun around vertical poles. Knives, pans, and ovens moved through the air in perfect circles. At the center hung a bell made from packed sound. Every few seconds, it pulsed and erased the noise from another section of the city. The shop in that zone offered kitchen items. Paige bought a rolling pin. I bought cooking oil, a box of toothpicks, and a pressure cooker. She looked at my choices and decided not to ask. I poured the oil onto a rotating wall. The entire restaurant ring began spinning faster. I threw toothpicks into the gears. They should have snapped, but tower purchases gained temporary durability. The toothpicks jammed the outer ring while the inner kitchen continued turning. Metal screamed, the floor warped. The pressure cooker absorbed heat from every nearby oven. Its safety valve shook. Paige rolled it into her forge and used the normal mechanical arms to lock the lid tighter. The cooker became a bomb powered by soup-level technology and tower-level nonsense. I placed it beneath the sound bell. Then I opened the valve with the dull knife. Steam fired upward like a white laser. The bell cracked. All the sound it had stolen returned at once. The noise was so powerful that the surrounding restaurants blew apart. Tables became spinning shields. Pans flew like metal birds. A refrigerator sailed past us with its doors open and swallowed 3 cloth monsters. The first source collapsed. Outside, 1/5 of the silence field vanished. My owner menu filled with purchases from the city. As soon as players regained access to skills, they bought mana potions and repair kits. My income surged. I purchased another ownership share while riding a flying table into the next zone. Ownership 6%. At 6%, owner's sample gained a ridiculous feature called sample chain. Whenever a sampled item caused another shop item to activate, there was a chance to create a free temporary copy of the second item. Normal language combos produced more combos. That was the kind of design decision that should never have reached me. The second zone was a flooded indoor amusement park. The water hung in the air as giant floating spheres. Roller coaster tracks passed through them. Bell creatures swam from one sphere to another while carrying captured players. The local shop sold pool toys. I bought inflatable rings, foam noodles, swim fins, and a plastic shark. The plastic shark was decorative. For 12 seconds, Paige fitted the portable forge inside the largest inflatable ring and added fins made from table fragments. I used owner's display to fill the ring with activated foam noodles. Sample chain triggered between the noodles, rings, and fins, multiplying them each time one touched another. The floating water sphere began filling with pool equipment. 10 rings became 100. 100 noodles became 10,000. The plastic shark gained temporary life because the tower considered it a purchased attraction. Then the shark duplicated too. The water turned pink, yellow, blue, and completely insane. Inflatable sharks swarmed the bell creatures. Foam noodles wrapped around their arms. Swim fins slapped them from every direction. Captured players floated free inside protective rings. I stood on top of the forge ring like the captain of a very embarrassing warship. Bell source hid inside the largest water sphere, guarded by a translucent whale with a cathedral window in its stomach. The whale opened its mouth and swallowed our entire inflatable army. I thanked it, then I ended owner's display. All temporary pool items vanished from its stomach at once, leaving a vacuum. The surrounding water collapsed inward. The whale folded like an empty bag. Paige fired the portable forge through its open mouth. I bought 3 underwater whistles and locked them inside the pressure cooker from the first zone. Sample chain duplicated the whistles each time they produced a vibration. The cooker began screaming underwater. The whale expanded. The cathedral window in its stomach cracked. The bell source inside shattered. The explosion launched us out of the water sphere and onto a roller coaster track. Paige's forge landed on the rails. Its wheels locked into place. We became a train. The third zone approached at full speed. It was a forest growing upside down from the bottom of the floor. Roots hung above us. Trees pointed into the clouds. Creatures crawled along branches beneath the track. The bell source moved through the forest inside a wooden giant with a face carved into its chest. Local shop sold gardening tools. I bought a watering can. Paige bought pruning shears. I bought fertilizer, seed packets, and a lawn sprinkler. The wooden giant swung a root-covered fist at our forge train. I poured a speed potion into the watering can and watered the seeds. They grew instantly, not into normal plants. The tower amplified the purchased items. Vines erupted from the roller coaster track, wrapped around the giant's arm, and kept growing. I spread fertilizer into the clouds. Every upside-down tree below absorbed it. The forest exploded upward. Thousands of branches punched through the wooden giant's body. Roots tangled its legs. Flowers the size of cars opened around its head and sprayed sleet pollen. Giant tore free. It grabbed the entire roller coaster track and swung it like a whip. Paige cut the rail ahead of us with the purchased pruning shears. The forge train left the track and flew through open air. I placed the lawn sprinkler on its roof. Owner's display filled the sprinkler with duplicated potions. Speed, growth, fire resistance, frost resistance, muscle enhancement, night vision, underwater breathing, and one potion that made hair grow faster because I had bought it by accident. Sprinkler spun. Potion rain covered the forest. Every plant gained random effects. Vines moved at high speed. Flowers became fireproof. Moss developed night vision, which was useless but probably exciting for the moss. Patch of grass grew long silver hair and wrapped it around a bell creature's ankles. The upside-down forest came alive as a chaotic green army. It dragged the wooden giant downward. Paige steered the Ford train between its shoulders. I jumped onto its head, bought a handsaw, and used the dull knife to separate the bell's source from the wood around it. Then I gave the bell to the forest. Vines crushed it, the third source broke. 3/5 of the city regained sound and skill access. Purchases surged again. My gold passed the next share price. Ownership, 7%. I unlocked Merchant Step. Once every minute, I could teleport to any active shop display I had created within 1 mile. That turned my temporary item racks into movement points. It also meant gravity had become a suggestion. Ford train fell toward the clouds after leaving the wooden giant. I created an owner's display above us, teleported to it, created another farther ahead, teleported again, and repeated. Paige grabbed one of my ankles while holding the forge with a cable. We climbed through the air by teleporting between floating shop displays. Behind us, Adrian cleared the highest bell source. I felt it through the owner menu because the entire city immediately bought fresh supplies. His methods were efficient. He had sacrificed 2 of his temporary companions to create an opening, used their dropped items to form a chain reaction, and destroyed the source without taking damage. Survivors revived outside because they had purchased protection. They were alive. Adrian had paid nothing. I received a percentage of the revival purchases. That did not make me feel good. My power rewarded activity, not morality. The shop did not care why people bought. It cared that they did. I could not stop every cruel person from using the system, but I could make cruelty expensive. The 4th remaining source waited inside a giant clockwork theater. Adrian reached it first. By the time Paige and I arrived, the stage was already covered in broken puppets and black cards. The bell source hung above a pit. 4 surviving climbers stood at the corners, each holding a chain. Adrian stood in the center. A massive puppet moved around him. It had 8 arms, a smiling wooden face, and strings attached to the ceiling. Every time Adrian attacked, the puppet redirected the damage to one of the people holding the chains. He had solved the trick. The bell could only be damaged while 4 living players held the chains. The puppet transferred harm to the holders. Clearing the source required sacrifice or a way to break the transfer. Adrian had chosen sacrifice. He released a captured lightning skill. 1 chain holder collapsed. The puppet cracked. A revival token activated outside the floor. The person disappeared in blue light. Adrian ordered the next survivor to hold the empty chain. I landed on the stage between them. He told me not to interfere. I bought 4 pairs of gloves from the theater shop. The gloves were used for handling puppet strings. I placed them on 4 founders' bricks. Then I ordered the bricks to hold the chains. The floor accepted them as active shop constructs. The remaining survivors let go and ran. The puppet redirected its next attack into my bricks. The bricks broke apart. Then owner's return pulled every piece back together. The transfer continued, but the damage no longer mattered. Founders' bricks could rebuild as long as 1 fragment remained. Adrian understood instantly. He attacked the bell source with everything he had. The puppet shattered. Damage poured into my 4 bricks. They burst, returned, burst again, and returned again. The bell broke. The source fell into the pit. Adrian gained credit for most of the damage. I did not care. The city regained almost all its abilities, and the captured people began escaping the tower. Adrian looked at the bricks holding the chains. Then he looked at me. For the first time, he was not smiling. He asked why I had helped him clear the source. I told him I had helped the people holding the chains. He said the result was the same. I told him that was the difference between us. He saw results as the only truth. I saw results as raw material for the next move. The boss chamber opened above the theater. A spiral staircase formed from golden receipts, each one burning without turning to ash. At the top waited the final bell source and the floor boss. Adrian stepped onto the staircase. Paige grabbed my arm before I followed. Her forge had detected something in the bell fragments. Every source carried a piece of the same mechanism. When assembled, the 5 pieces would create a silence engine capable of disabling every purchase skill in a huge area. The floor boss would use it automatically. Adrian had collected the fragment from his source. We had 3, the final fragment waited above. I understood his real plan. He had never cared about the territory blessing. He wanted the silence engine. A device that disabled purchased abilities would let him attack rich players while preventing them from using the very items they depended on. He could enter any safe route, turn off defenses, steal resources, and leave before anyone recovered. He had spent millions in the shop to become its greatest customer. Now he wanted a weapon against every other customer. I had no intention of letting him keep his loyalty reward. We climbed. The boss chamber was a round platform above the clouds. The city spread below us in every direction. At the center stood a creature made from hanging bells and white cloth. It had no head, only a hollow frame where sound spun like a black sun. The final source floated inside its chest. Its name appeared. The Silent Collector, level 60, recommended party size 50. Players present 3. Adrian walked forward without hesitation. He released every black card around his hand. Captured skills filled the sky. Fire dragons, ice lances, gravity wells, poison clouds, cutting wind, and beams of white energy struck the collector at once. Boss rang its body, all the skills vanished. Then the stolen attacks reappeared behind us, not copied by a mirror enemy. The collector simply stored soundless energy and redirected it through its bells. I activated Merchant Step and teleported between owner displays. Paige dropped flat and covered herself with the forge. Adrian used his empty cards as stepping stones, moving through the barrage with terrifying precision. The platform shattered. The collector spread its white cloth wings and rose. Below, the city saw the boss above the tower and panicked. Millions of players opened the shop. My income became a golden explosion. Gold rose by thousands every second. Experience hit so hard that my vision blurred. Level 40, 42, 45. Shop points filled entire lines of the menu. And because the city's fighters were buying high-level items, my owner catalog gained temporary access to categories I had never seen. Sky chains, gravity anchors, mana turbines, pocket fortresses, meteor capsules. I did not need to own them permanently. I only needed one sample. The collector fired a wave of silence that erased every active item effect across the platform. Paige's forge fell from the sky. Adrian lost his card steps. My owner displays vanished. We dropped toward the city. I opened the shop while falling. The tower restriction required purchases made inside the tower. We were still inside its boundary. I bought a pocket fortress. It cost almost everything I had earned that day. 6% returned to me immediately. The item unfolded beneath us. Black castle the size of a suitcase appeared, expanded, and continued expanding until it became a floating fortress wider than the tower. Walls slammed into place. Cannons emerged from gold-lined windows. Chains fired upward and wrapped around the collector. Paige landed on a battlement with her forge. Adrian landed in the courtyard. I landed on a throne that appeared for decorative reasons and immediately threw it over the wall because I preferred the founder's chair. The collector pulled against the sky chains. I bought gravity anchors and attached them to the fortress. The anchors did not pull us down. They pulled the city's floating roads up. Entire sections of abandoned highway rose into the sky and spiraled around the boss. Cars, streetlights, and concrete barriers became a rotating cage. Paige connected the forge to the fortress cannons. I fed her sampled meteor capsules. The meteor capsule was supposed to summon one small falling rock. Sample chain triggered when the capsule activated the cannon. 1 became 2, 2 became 4. The fortress fired a storm of flaming stones upward. Each meteor struck a highway segment, bounced, changed direction, and hit the collector from another angle. The sky became a burning game of pool. The collector's bells rang faster. It redirected some meteors. I recalled the founder's brick and used it to mark the boss as a customer. Then I threw healing potions into its open frame. The potions activated on contact and restored tiny amounts of health. That seemed stupid. It was not. Each healing effect created a shop interaction inside the tower. Sample chain duplicated nearby consumables. The meteor capsules multiplied faster. The boss healed 1 point and received 50 meteors in return. Adrian saw the pattern and joined the attack. He bought a mana turbine, fed it the remaining energy in his black cards, and powered the fortress's main cannon. For a few seconds we fought together. Not because we trusted each other, because the collector was between each of us and what we wanted. The main cannon fired. A column of compressed light tore through the boss's cloth wings. Bells exploded. The final source became visible. Paige launched her forge toward it. Adrian moved at the same time. He stepped on falling cards, reached the source first, and cut it free with the dull knife. The collector collapsed. The final bell source landed in Adrian's hand. The tower floor cleared. Outside, the monster wave stopped. Captured survivors returned. The territory blessing spread over the river district, strengthening barriers and reducing monster spawns. Adrian received the legendary class resource for dealing the final strike. I received access to the expanded shop category because that reward went to every surviving participant. Paige received a crafting core from the boss remains. On paper, everyone won. Then Adrian combined the final source fragment with the one he had taken earlier. He did not have all 5 pieces. He only had 2. The other 3 were inside Paige's forge. Adrian pointed a black card at her. The card contained the tower boss's silence wave. He demanded the fragments. Paige looked at me. I looked over the fortress wall at the city below. Then I asked Adrian whether he had noticed the owner display behind him. He turned. There was no display. There was a founder's chair. He had been lowering himself into a crouch to aim the card. A chair appeared beneath him. Adrian sat. For one absurd second, the most dangerous player in the region was perfectly seated. The chair's upgraded effect activated. Anyone forced to sit became unable to leave until they completed 1 full purchase from the shop. Adrian opened the shop instantly. He bought the cheapest item available. A paper crown appeared on his head. I had not chosen the item. The tower shop had. He looked furious. I almost laughed, but the user specifically asked me to avoid crown-based arcs, and this was not an arc. It was a paper hat lasting 3 seconds. Adrian completed the purchase and stood. Those 3 seconds were enough. Paige fed the 3 fragments into her forge, not to protect them, but to melt them. The pieces fused with the crafting core and became a bell-shaped engine inside the forge. Adrian fired the silence card. Paige fired the engine. The 2 waves collided. Every sound in the fortress compressed into a single point. I threw the founder's brick through it. The brick carried the compressed sound into Adrian's card ring. All his remaining cards activated at once. Skills burst around him in every direction. Wind lifted him. Ice froze his coat. Vines wrapped his legs. A teleport charge moved him 6 feet into the air. Sleep spell hit him just before gravity returned. He fell unconscious into a containment cube. The cube closed. I had captured him. For about 4 seconds, the legendary class resource in his hand activated. Black lines spread across the cube. Adrian transformed the inside space into a card, folded the card, and stepped out of it. His new class had already begun forming. He looked at me, Paige, and the floating fortress. And he smiled again. He had lost the silence engine, but he had gained something else, confirmation. He now knew my power was connected to the shop itself. He used a teleport charge and vanished before I could trap him again. I let him go. Paige was angry about that. I explained that Adrian had used a shop teleport item. I received a dividend from his escape. She did not find that comforting. Neither did I. The tower victory made me famous across the region. Recordings showed the floating fortress, the meteor storm, the highway cage, and the moment the boss bought healing by accident. People believed I had a duplication class, a fortress class, a construction class, or a secret brick class. No one guessed the truth. Adrian came closest, and somewhere beyond the river he began spending even more. The regional customer ranking updated. Adrian remained number 1. I was number 2. The system shop's greatest customer had become my greatest source of income. The race between us had started. A week after the tower battle was the first time I understood how dangerous popularity could be. Before the fortress appeared, most people thought I was a strange fighter with a duplication skill. Afterward, everyone wanted something. Some wanted me to duplicate medicine. Some wanted me to clear towers. Some wanted me to join their group, protect their building, fix their weapon, train their children, recover their relatives, or explain why a folding chair had become a legendary combat item. The answer to the last question was simple. The chair believed in itself. The other requests were harder. My samples were temporary unless I paid a large amount of shop points to stabilize them. I could create a mountain of food for an hour, but the food disappeared afterward. That was useful during a battle and terrible during digestion. I could duplicate potions, but permanent copies became more expensive each time. I had money, not infinity. Not yet, so I built something better than free supplies. I opened a branch display. The privilege appeared at 8% ownership. It allowed me to place a glowing shop pillar in a safe zone. Players within range received a small discount on basic survival goods. I received normal dividends on every purchase, and the display generated bonus shop points based on total volume. I placed the first pillar in Paige's workshop. The effect was immediate. People who had been saving potions bought them. Craftspeople purchased materials. Families bought food packs and water filters. Fighters repaired gear before it broke. The discount was small, but the workshop became the safest and cheapest place to prepare. My income increased because more people spent. The city became stronger because supplies cost less. Paige gained a constant stream of customers. Jace gained fewer emergency problems. Everyone won except the monsters, and they were not invited to complain. I placed more displays near shelters, training yards, and tower gates. Each one looked like a golden tree growing from the pavement. Items rotated in rings around the trunk. Players could tap the air and make purchases without opening their personal menu. Within 3 days, transaction volume doubled. At 9% ownership, my sample limits increased again. At 10%, the owner menu changed color. A golden doorway appeared inside my inventory. Behind it was the owner's warehouse. Space was larger than a stadium. Endless shelves rose into mist. Most were empty, but every item in my personal catalog had a permanent display slot. The founder's brick rested on a velvet cushion like a royal jewel. The founder's chair sat beside it with the smug posture of furniture that had defeated a tower climber. The warehouse did not give me free permanent items. It gave me control. I could prepare combinations inside it without time limits. I could store unstable samples until needed. I could connect display racks, launch systems, traps, and crafting stations before manifesting them outside. Paige stepped through the doorway, looked at the endless space, and forgot how to speak for almost a minute. Then she began building. We turned one section into a forge line. Another became a testing field. We stacked portable barriers into walls, linked monoturbines into power grids, and filled racks with every harmless object that had ever become dangerous in my hands. Spoons, ladders, soap, umbrellas, rolling pins. Thousands of bricks. A normal person would have seen junk. I saw a future with a pattern. The warehouse also revealed a new statistic. Regional market share, 12%. My ownership was 10%, but my displays influenced 12% of all shop transactions in the region. The more useful the displays became, the more players used them, and the more bonus points I received. That was when Adrian changed tactics. He stopped challenging me directly. Instead, people began disappearing near tower gates. No blood, no public attacks, no obvious pattern. A fighter would buy supplies, enter an alley, and vanish. A crafting group would leave Page's workshop with new tools, then fail to reach its shelter. A courier carrying monster cores would disappear between two branch displays. Jace found traces of teleport powder at every location. Adrian was not stealing random people. He was targeting customers with high-value inventories. He used concealment fields to hide his group, teleport items to move victims, and memory crystals to study their purchases. And he took their items, sold what he did not need, and spent the profit on more tools. The regional customer ranking showed his activity climbing. He was building something. I could not see what he bought. Owner statistics showed values in categories, not exact private inventories. That limitation existed for every owner's share, and I respected it. A shop that exposed every customer's choices would not remain popular for long. But Adrian had one habit I could use. He always tested a target before attacking. He watched how they moved, what they purchased, who traveled with them, and where they felt safe. He did not strike until he believed he had removed every surprise, so I became predictable. Every evening I left the workshop alone. I walked the same road. I carried the same black storage case. I stopped at the same abandoned coffee shop, purchased the same energy drink from my display, and continued toward the river. For 6 nights, nothing happened. On the 7th, the road became too quiet. Streetlights bent away from me. Sound softened. A concealment field covered 3 blocks. I opened the black case and checked its contents. Inside sat a stabilized duplication core worth more gold than most players would earn in a year. It was real, that was important. Adrian would have detected a fake. He appeared on the roof of the coffee shop with 12 masked followers. I did not give them names. They were not going to remain important long enough to need them. Grant stood beside Adrian. Adrian had broken him out of jail 2 hours earlier by sending a captured burrowing monster through the parking structure. The escape happened during a scheduled monster migration, when Jace's team was stretched across the district. Grant's crystal body had grown larger. Black spikes curved from his forearms. Heat glowed through cracks in his chest. He looked less human and more like a statue that had become angry about being placed outdoors. He jumped from the roof and landed in front of me. Adrian remained above. That told me he was considered disposable. Grant demanded the duplication core. I told him he had already stolen 1 fake artifact from me and spent a week in a slime-reinforced cell. He charged. The concealment field disabled outside communication. Adrian's followers closed every exit. Teleport anchors activated around the block, preventing escape items from working. It was an excellent trap. That was why I had spent 6 nights helping them prepare it. Every time Adrian's people placed an anchor, I marked its location. Every time they tested the concealment field, one of my branch displays recorded the transaction volume nearby. Every time they bought another restraint, poison, or barrier, I received dividends. He had built a cage around me using items from my shop. I had watched the cage grow 1 purchase at a time. Grant swung a crystal fist. I let it hit the black case. Duplication core shattered. A wave of blue light expanded across the road. Grant smiled because he thought he had destroyed my power. Adrian did not smile. He understood what a stabilized duplication core did when broken. Copied the nearest constructed object. The nearest constructed objects were the teleport anchors. 1 anchor became 2, 2 became 4. The copied anchors overlapped, multiplied, and began redirecting each other. Space folded across the block. Doorways appeared in walls, sidewalks connected to rooftops. The same alley repeated in 6 directions. Adrian's perfect cage became a maze. His followers tried to retreat. Every step returned them to the center. Grant punched through a wall and emerged from the coffee shop ceiling. I opened the owner's warehouse. Paige had spent all afternoon preparing the next part. The warehouse doors unfolded behind me, not as a normal entrance but as a launch tunnel. Thousands of shelves faced the road. Every shelf held a loaded device. I called it the Customer Appreciation Event. The first rack fired nets made from duplicated rope. Nets passed through the folded streets, appeared from random doorways, and wrapped around Adrian's followers. The second rack launched containment cubes. The cubes bounced through teleport loops, accelerated each time, and struck their targets from impossible angles. The third rack fired Founder's bricks. Not 1 brick, not 100, 10,000 temporary copies. They entered the spatial maze and began orbiting the block. Red lines filled the air. Every brick split into smaller bricks. Every smaller brick carried a launch spring. The street became a red hurricane. Grant roared and covered his body in crystal. The hurricane polished him. Bricks struck from every direction, not breaking his armor but rotating him faster and faster. Launch springs attached to his feet. Every time he touched the ground, he bounced higher. Soon he was spinning above the street like a furious black top. Adrian released a silence card. The wave disabled the temporary brick effects. They became ordinary falling bricks. That should have saved him. Instead, 10,000 ordinary bricks fell from 50 feet. Silence did not disable gravity. Impact buried half his followers. They survived because I had mixed cushioning gel into the road earlier. Adrian noticed the gel only after landing in it. He cut through the surface with a black card and tried to step into a teleport fold. Founder's chair appeared beneath him. He avoided sitting by twisting sideways. A second chair appeared, then a third. I had registered folding stools, benches, couches, and one inflatable pool chair in the personal catalog. Every time Adrian bent his knees, something tried to seat him. He moved through the street in a furious dance, kicking furniture out of his path while I walked calmly behind him. Grant finally fell. I opened a display directly beneath him. The display contained 500 mattresses. He landed safely, bounced once, and discovered that every mattress had a containment cube under it. Cubes opened together. Grant disappeared inside a layered prison. One cube held another cube, which held another, all the way down. Breaking the outer layer only exposed the next. Each escape attempt triggered a shop offer for tools, and every purchase paid me. Grant began shopping immediately. Adrian reached the edge of the folded space and threw a memory crystal into the air. It replayed the layout from before the duplication core broke, giving him a fixed reference point. He used that point to cut a straight path through the maze. Clever. I respected it. Then I activated Warehouse Recall. Every teleport anchor Adrian's group had placed was now inside my catalog because the broken core had duplicated them through my owner space. I recalled the originals. The anchors ripped out of the ground and flew into the warehouse. The maze collapsed. Adrian's straight path vanished under him. He fell into the coffee shop basement. Paige was waiting there with her forge. She had built a machine from the captured silence engine. The machine did not disable skills. It captured 1 second of sound and released it as physical force. For 6 nights, the coffee shop had recorded me opening the same energy drink. Click, hiss, 6 tiny sounds. Paige amplified them through 1,000 mana turbines. The basement erupted with the sound of the universe opening a soda. Adrian blasted through the roof and landed in the street without his gray coat. Most of his cards had shattered. Blood ran from one ear. He still looked calm. He held one card between 2 fingers. The card showed the river jail. Grant's escape had not been his main attack. While Jace chased the burrowing monster and I entered the concealment trap, Adrian's remaining people had entered the jail through the tunnel. They were releasing every violent prisoner inside. The card was not a threat. It was a live view. Cells opened. Barrier pylons failed. Containment doors cracked. Adrian told me I could capture him or save the safe zone. He believed that choice would force me to let him escape. It would have if I were alone. I tapped the owner menu. Every branch display in the river district changed from gold to blue. Emergency sale activated. For 10 minutes, barriers, restraint items, healing potions, and movement tools were heavily discounted. I paid the difference from my own gold. Thousands of ordinary survivors purchased what they needed at once. Workshop apprentices bought barrier plates. The market vendors bought shock nets. The shelter groups bought ceiling foam. Jace's security team purchased fresh containment cubes and speed boosts. The entire safe zone armed itself with defensive items in seconds. My gold dropped. My transaction count exploded. Bonus shop points flooded the owner menu. The jailbreak collapsed under a citywide wave of cheap equipment. People sealed tunnels, restored barriers, and trapped escaping prisoners inside shops, buses, fountains, and one bakery freezer. Jace returned to the jail gate and looked directly into Adrian's viewing card. He gave a small wave. Then he broke the burrowing monster's capture crystal and sent it back through the tunnel. The feed ended. Adrian's expression changed by less than an inch. That was enough. I had spent gold to save the safe zone, but the sale produced so many transactions that the bonus points unlocked my next owner privilege. Inventory rain. I raised one hand. The warehouse opened above the entire block. Sky turned gold. Shop items began to fall. Not weapons aimed to kill. Restraints, nets, foam cushions, rubber hammers, sticky gloves, inflatable walls. Every ridiculous non-lethal item in my catalog poured down in controlled streams. Adrian ran. The street stretched beneath him as launch pads activated. Nets chased him from rooftops. Foam cannons fired from windows. Rubber hammers bounced through teleport remnants. Inflatable walls rose in front of every turn. He cut through one, climbed another, and used a final black card to create wings. I threw the founder's brick. It split in the air, not toward Adrian, but toward the falling items around him. Each strike activated sample chain. Nets duplicated. Foam multiplied. Inflatable walls expanded into a giant sphere. Adrian became trapped inside a floating ball of emergency equipment. He burned through the first layer. Paige launched her forge into the second. The forge arms unfolded and welded every restraint together. Jace arrived on a rune-covered city bus. The bus drove up a ramp made from duplicated mattresses, flew through the air, and struck the equipment ball like a giant blue hammer. The ball crashed into the road. Adrian escaped the bottom at the last possible moment. He landed beside Grant's layered containment prison. Grant had finally broken through the last cube. For one hopeful second, they stood together. And I recalled the mattresses under them. The ground disappeared. Both fell into the loading bay of the security bus. Jace closed the doors. Paige sealed them with the forge. I placed an owner display outside containing nothing but cheap escape items. Grant bought 3 before realizing they only moved him from one bus seat to another. Adrian did not buy anything. He sat in silence while Jace drove them back to jail. We had captured the region's most dangerous customer. I received a dividend when the jail purchased a new barrier system to hold him. That felt appropriate. The city celebrated for one night. I did not. Adrian had lost the battle, but his spending had revealed the scale of his preparation. The owner statistics showed millions of gold moving through categories far beyond what we had seen. Monster eggs, dimensional fuel, weather devices, dungeon seeds. He had not used any of them during the trap. That meant they were stored somewhere else. Adrian had allowed himself to be captured without using his most expensive tools. Either he had finally made a mistake, or the jail was exactly where he wanted to be. At midnight, my owner menu displayed a regional purchase so large that every branch pillar rang at once. A customer activated a dungeon seed beneath the city. The ground split open, and the river began flowing upward. The river did not rise like a flood. It peeled away from the ground. Miles of water lifted in one shining sheet, curved over the city, and formed an upside-down river in the sky. Fish swam above rooftops. Boats hung beneath the water like insects stuck to glass. The empty riverbed cracked open, revealing a spiral of stone stairs descending into green light. Then roots erupted from below. They punched through roads, wrapped buildings, and dragged entire blocks toward the riverbed. The dungeon seed was growing, not because it cared about me, not because the shop had changed, and not because any hidden hand had pressed a special button. Adrian had bought a dangerous item and planted it under the city before his capture. Now it was doing exactly what the description promised. Dungeon seed creates a permanent high-value dungeon by consuming surrounding terrain during its growth phase. Growth time, 12 hours. Estimated consumption radius, 8 miles. The river safe zone sat at the center. Jace's security bus had just entered the parking structure jail when the first root split the foundation. The entire building tilted. Cells slid across the floors. Barrier lights failed. The lower levels dropped into the opening riverbed. Adrian had wanted to be inside because the jail stood directly above the seed. Grant had been brought along because Adrian needed something heavy, angry, and willing to break walls. The dungeon swallowed the parking structure. Adrian escaped during the fall. Grant escaped by punching through 6 cells and accidentally freeing everyone else. Within minutes, violent prisoners were climbing from the broken structure into a newborn underground world. Jay sent one message before communications died. The dungeon was pulling the whole safe zone downward. I activated every branch display at once. Emergency evacuation items appeared at reduced prices. Glider capes, rope launchers, inflatable shelters, teleport tags, climbing claws, and portable bridges filled the menus. People bought faster than I had ever seen. Shop pillars opened like golden flowers. Racks unfolded across the streets. Survivors grabbed movement items and fled from the cracking ground. The purchase volume paid me, but the discounts burned gold just as quickly. My balance dropped by hundreds of thousands. Millions, I did not stop the sale. An owner who protected only his money would eventually own a very empty shop. Paige connected the silence engine to her forge and drove it into the street. The device released stored sound as a lifting force. Every crash, scream, and breaking wall became power. She fired that power beneath a collapsing apartment building and held it in the air long enough for people to escape. I opened the owner's warehouse over the roof. Inventory rain poured out ladders, trampolines, cushions, glider capes, and inflatable boats. Boats sounded useless until the sky river began dripping upward. People climbed into them and the reverse water carried them away from the collapse. A school bus fell into a crack. I recalled a branch display from the other side of the city, manifested it below the bus, and used Merchant Step to teleport inside. Children and adults were strapped into the seats, staring through windows at a green abyss. I bought a pocket fortress. The fortress unfolded around the falling bus. Stone walls expanded through the crack, caught the vehicle, and wedged between the roots. I filled the courtyard with launch springs and fired the entire bus back to the surface. It landed on 100 duplicated mattresses. No one was hurt. The pocket fortress remained stuck underground, blocking the crack like a giant stone cork. Roots punched through it 30 seconds later. I bought another, then another. The shop had not intended pocket fortresses to become disposable building plugs. The shop had also not intended anyone to own 10% of it and receive a partial refund on every panic purchase in a city. By the 6th fortress, my emergency discount had generated enough bonus shop points to unlock Price Echo. Whenever I personally bought an item during a high-volume sales period, there was a chance the shop would create a temporary duplicate in my warehouse. I bought 10 fortresses. The warehouse received 43. Now we were doing business. I dropped fortresses into every major crack. Towers unfolded sideways. Courtyards formed underground. Walls braced streets. One fortress opened upside down beneath a hospital and caught the entire building on its roof. Paige ran from block to block, welding the fortresses together with bridges and rails. The safe zone became a ridiculous patchwork of old city and temporary castles. Jace emerged from the riverbed, driving the security bus vertically up a route. The bus had lost 2 wheels, every window, and most of its dignity. Containment cubes bounced inside. A dozen freed prisoners chased it through the dungeon entrance. I placed a founder's chair on the route. First prisoner stepped around it. I placed another. Soon the route was covered in folding furniture. The pursuers slowed, jumped, crouched, and triggered chairs beneath themselves. Each one became stuck until completing a shop purchase. They bought cheap knives. I received dividends. The knives appeared in their hands. Then I recalled every chair at once. The seated prisoners fell backward into containment cubes rolling down the route. Jace reached the surface and drove the bus straight into one of my fortress courtyards. Paige sealed the gate behind him. He told me Adrian had gone deeper. Of course he had. Dungeon Seed's core would finish forming at the end of 12 hours. Whoever claimed it could control the completed dungeon, choose its entrance locations, and collect a percentage of its monster and treasure generation. Adrian wanted a dungeon that produced infinite resources. I wanted the city to remain above ground. Those goals were not compatible. The dungeon's growth could be stopped only by reaching the seed core before the final hour and destroying one of 3 feeding routes. Each route ended in a different zone. We had 11 hours. Jace stayed on the surface to continue evacuation. Paige came with me. We entered through the riverbed. The newborn dungeon had no quiet halls. It was still assembling itself around us. Stone platforms grew from dirt. Trees emerged upside down. Water moved through the ceiling. Buildings stolen from the city appeared inside cavern walls, bent at impossible angles. The first feeding route ran through a zone made from swallowed streets. Traffic lights grew like fruit. Cars crawled on metal legs. Store signs whispered item prices. Every object had become part monster, part city. Local creatures were called street eaters. They looked like intersections folded into walking mouths. One charged us with 4 lanes of teeth. I opened owner's display and manifested traffic cones. Thousands of cones filled the road. The creature obeyed its city instincts and changed lanes. I moved the cones. It changed again. Paige placed the forge on a crosswalk and rotated the rune plates. White stripes lifted from the pavement like ribbons and wrapped around the monster's legs. I duplicated stop signs, stacked them into a wall, and made the street eater wait. It actually stopped. The system considered traffic symbols part of its body language. I walked up to a level 50 monster shaped like a carnivorous highway and hit it with the founder's brick while it respected pedestrian priority. Brick marked it as a customer. The monster opened a shop window in its mouth and bought a speed upgrade to ignore the signs. Triple dividend received. It accelerated. I covered the road with soap. The street eater slid through 3 swallowed buildings, crossed a vertical intersection, and flew into the sealing river. Cars living on its back detached and scattered like beetles. Paige fired a cable around the feeding route. The route was wider than a train and protected by layers of city stone. Normal attacks barely scratched it. I needed force. The owner's warehouse contained 40 temporary pocket fortresses. I manifested the first above the route. It expanded, then I manifested a second inside the first. The 2 fortresses tried to occupy the same space. Stone screamed. Walls launched outward. The route cracked. I added a third, then 10. Fortress towers burst from fortress courtyards. Gates folded through walls. Staircases punched into ceilings. The entire zone filled with castles fighting for elbow room. Paige climbed the growing architecture and attached the forge to the root crack. She fed the machine every vibration from the expanding fortresses. When the stored force reached maximum, she released it into one point. The first feeding route snapped. The dungeon screamed through every swallowed street. Growth slowed by 1/3. My level jumped to 50. The shop network expanded again. Continental transactions became eligible. My menu froze. Until that moment, I had earned from one region containing a few million active players. The continental network contained hundreds of millions. Notifications vanished because there were too many to display. Gold rose like a spinning counter in a broken arcade machine. Experience hit me every second. Shop points poured in faster than I could read. The system compressed the stream into a simple rate. Gold per second, 18,442. Experience per second, 9,105. Shop points per second, 673. I stood inside a castle explosion and watched myself become rich enough to frighten mathematics. At first, the 1% dividend had given me fractions of a coin. Now 10% of a continent's survival economy belonged to me. I bought ownership shares as fast as the menu could process them. 11%, 12, 13. The price rose sharply, but so did the income. 14, 15. At 15%, the owner's warehouse expanded into an entire pocket world. Shelves became districts. Crafting halls formed around Paige's Forge link. Testing fields stretched to the horizon. A private sky appeared overhead, filled with empty item slots waiting to become constellations. At 16%, inventory rain gain weather patterns. I could create a storm of one item category over a selected area. At 17, sample echo could copy structures. At 18, owner's display became owner's market, lasting 10 minutes and covering a mile. I stopped at 18 because spending every coin before entering an unknown zone remained a bad idea, even when coins arrived by the second. Paige stared at the expanded warehouse doorway. Then she pointed at the unfinished item constellations in the private sky. I understood her immediately. We registered the temporary fortresses as a structure pattern. Then we fused them with launch springs, gravity anchors, and traffic signals. The result entered my catalog as the Fortress Convoy. And activated, it created a moving line of connected castles that followed directional markers and crushed hostile terrain. We deployed it through the second zone. The second feeding route ran across an underground ocean filled with enormous jellyfish. Their bodies contained pieces of stolen buildings. Office rooms floated inside one. A movie theater glowed inside another. The largest carried the jail's missing lower level in its stomach. Grant was inside. He had broken free from Adrian, become lost, and climbed into the jellyfish because he thought the cells contained valuable prisoners. The jellyfish swallowed him and sealed the opening. He was currently punching walls while being digested by rainbow light. I considered leaving him. Paige reminded me that Jace would complain. I deployed the Fortress Convoy. 10 connected castles burst from the shoreline and rolled onto the ocean. Gravity anchors pulled water beneath their foundations, creating moving islands. Cannons fired duplicated umbrellas that opened upside down and caught falling jellyfish stingers. I stood on the lead battlement. Paige steered using a traffic signal mounted on the forge. Green moved the convoy forward. Yellow made it turn. Red caused every fortress to stop and fire. The ocean came alive. Jellyfish rose around us, each 1 mile of translucent flesh in stolen rooms. They fired electrical beams. Fortress barriers flashed. Towers broke and regenerated from samples. Inventory rain filled the sky with rubber boots, which absorbed electrical effects and fell onto the creatures like protective footwear from the heavens. One jellyfish tried to wrap around the convoy. I created a weather pattern of scissors. They were ordinary crafting scissors purchased from the expanded shop. Sample effects made them fly. Millions of blades descended in spirals, cutting tentacles into glowing ribbons. Another jellyfish opened the windows of the office building in its body and released paper monsters. I changed the weather to staplers. The paper monsters became organized. We reached the jail jellyfish. Grant had punched a hole through 3 cell walls and was now trapped in a laundry room. He saw the Fortress Convoy through the translucent skin and began waving. I opened a branch display inside the jellyfish. Grant received a shop offer for an escape drill. He bought it. Dividend received. The drill cut through the laundry room and launched him into a corridor. He bought a breathing potion. Dividend received. He bought a direction compass. The compass pointed toward the safest exit, which was not where he wanted to go. He ignored it, entered the evidence room, and awakened 6 captured monsters. He bought a barrier. Dividend received. I watched his progress through the display and began to suspect Grant was my most reliable customer after Adrian. The jellyfish charged electricity around the swallowed jail. I manifested the Fortress Convoy inside its body. Not the whole thing, just one sampled gate. The gate expanded through the evidence room. Grant, the monsters, the laundry machines, and half a cell block flew out of the jellyfish and landed in our courtyard. Jace's missing prisoners scattered. Paige slammed the traffic signal to red. Every fortress stopped and fired containment foam across the courtyard. The prisoners froze in place. Grant broke free first and tried to attack me. The founder's chair appeared behind him. He refused to sit. A fortress cannon fired a couch. He sat. The shop required him to complete a purchase before standing. He bought another escape charm. The charm moved him to the couch in the next fortress. I repeated the process all the way across the convoy. By the 10th couch, Grant had spent almost all his gold and still ended inside a containment cube. He delivered him to an empty cell block and sealed it in the owner's warehouse. The warehouse prevented violence between stored players, making it safer than the damaged jail. Grant demanded to be released. I placed a branch display outside his cell. He could buy snacks. We continued. The feeding route ran beneath the ocean, protected by a shell of compressed water. The jellyfish swarmed around it. Destroying the route directly would collapse the ocean into the deeper dungeon levels and drown everyone below, so we did not destroy it. We moved it. I duplicated gravity anchors and attached them to the route. Paige reversed their pull using the silence engine's wave direction. Instead of anchoring the route to the ocean floor, they anchored it to the sky river above the city. The route tore free from the dungeon. Miles of wood shot upward through the riverbed, pierced the floating water, and emerged into the air like a giant tree trunk. The underground ocean followed for a moment, stretching into a column. Then the jellyfish were pulled out too. They rose through the city inside a water tornado. Jace saw them coming and activated every branch display on the surface. Players bought umbrellas, water barriers, and capture nets. The city turned the jellyfish invasion into a public fishing event. Somebody caught one with a bus. The second feeding route disconnected. Dungeon growth slowed again. Only one route remained. The seed had 4 hours before completion. Adrian had reached the final zone an hour ahead of us. His customer ranking began climbing so fast that even the Continental Network noticed. He was buying monster eggs, thousands of them. Then tens of thousands. He was not preparing to fight the dungeon core. He was feeding it an army. The third zone was not underground. It was inside the seed. He entered through a split in the feeding route and fell into a green sky filled with floating islands. Each island was made from compressed pieces of the city: rooftops, train platforms, parks, parking lots, and sections of road. A glowing sphere hung at the center like a newborn moon. That sphere was the dungeon core. The final feeding route connected every island to it. Adrian stood on the largest island beneath the core. Black cards circled him in layers. He had rebuilt his collection using the prisoners, monsters, and stolen skills inside the dungeon. Around him lay rows of shop-bought eggs. They covered the island from edge to edge. Small eggs, large eggs, burning eggs, frozen eggs, eggs covered in feathers, scales, bark, metal, crystal, smoke, and one that looked suspiciously like a cardboard box shaking with bad intentions. Adrian had purchased incubation fuel too. The eggs began to hatch. A monster army appeared in waves. Winged lizards burst into the air. Stone insects crawled across the island. Long-necked beasts unfolded from shells smaller than their heads. Fire wolves ran along the underside of floating roads. Giant worms chewed through buildings and turned the debris into armor. Adrian had not bought them to protect himself. He had bought them to feed the core. Dungeon seed gained energy from every creature born inside it. If enough monsters hatched before we broke the root, the core would mature early. Adrian could claim it before the city finished evacuating. Page opened the forge. I opened Owner's Market. A golden ring spread across the entire inner sky. Shop displays appeared on every floating island, even the ones occupied by monsters. Adrian looked up. He knew what I was doing but could not stop it. Every hatched monster counted as a player-like customer for basic survival items. They had instincts, needs, and access to simple purchases if marked or prompted by danger. I threw the founder's brick into the army. It split into a red cloud. Thousands of creatures became customers. Then I created weather, not weapons, appetite tonics. Tiny bottles rained across the islands. Monsters swallowed them and became hungry enough to attack the nearest source of energy. That source was the dungeon core. Adrian had created an army to feed the seed. I made the army eat the seed instead. Winged lizards turned upward and fired flames at the glowing sphere. Stone insects climbed the feeding route. Worms bit into the core's outer shell. The dungeon shook as its own newborn monsters attacked it. Adrian released control cards, forcing nearby creatures to turn back toward me. I changed the weather to pet whistles. Millions of whistles fell through the sky. Each produced a different command tone. The overlapping signals confused every controlled monster. Some sat, some rolled over, some chased their tails. One enormous fire wolf attempted to shake hands with a parking garage. Page drove the fortress convoy through the air using gravity anchors. Castles rolled from island to island, connected by unfolding bridges. The forge fired cables into the feeding route. Adrian sent a flock of metal insects toward her. I switched the weather to magnets. The insects clumped into a single buzzing ball. Then I switched to bowling balls. A storm of black spheres struck the magnetic clump and sent it through 3 islands. Adrian moved faster than the chaos. He stepped between black cards, reached the core, and placed both hands against it. The legendary class resource from the tower activated. His class finally completed. Card Sovereign. The title sounded dramatic, but the ability was simple and terrifying. Adrian could turn any completed action he witnessed into a one-use card: a sword swing, a spell, a jump, a purchase, a revival, a structure opening. He did not copy people or become a mirror enemy. He captured events after they happened and replayed them as stored effects. He had watched my fortress unfold. A black card appeared between his fingers. He threw it. A second pocket fortress opened inside my convoy. Walls collided, towers shattered, bridges folded. Page's forge nearly disappeared between expanding courtyards. I recalled the entire convoy into the warehouse. Adrian's copied fortress remained. He had stolen one of my best moves. That was fine. I had already learned a better one. At 18% ownership, I could create an owner's market 1 mile wide. Inside that market, sampled shop structures did not need to appear at full size. I manifested 1,000 pocket fortresses as miniatures. Each was the size of a marble. I filled a glass jar with them. Then I threw the jar at Adrian's fortress. The glass broke. 1,000 castles expanded at once. The floating island disappeared beneath an eruption of walls, towers, gates, courtyards, staircases, wells, kitchens, armories, and decorative statues. Fortresses unfolded inside fortresses, upside down, sideways, and through each other. The structure grew into a city-sized knot. Adrian escaped on a card before the expansion crushed him. The final feeding route did not. Castle foundations wrapped around it. Towers twisted. Gates slammed. The route bent under impossible pressure. Paige connected her forge to the structure knot and reversed every expansion force toward the center. The knot contracted. 1,000 fortresses tried to become marbles again, while the root remained trapped inside. Result was a wooden explosion. The final feeding root snapped. The dungeon core flickered. Growth stopped with 3 hours remaining. The floating islands began falling. We had saved the city from being consumed, but the newborn dungeon was now collapsing around us. Every monster, building, road, and water mass inside the seed started dropping toward the central core. Adrian smiled. A collapsing dungeon compressed all its value into the core before death. If he claimed it during the collapse, he would receive everything the seed had consumed. He threw cards into the air. Captured movement effects formed a path to the core. Jumps, teleports, dashes, flight skills, bounce effects, glider openings, and one replayed moment of me riding a paper umbrella connected into a black staircase. He climbed faster than we could follow. I used merchant step, but my display points were breaking apart with the islands. Paige tried to launch the forge, but the gravity shifted every second. Adrian reached the core first. He pressed a capture card against its surface. The core began flattening into black paper. I had seconds, so I bought the core, not directly. The shop did not list dungeon cores as normal items, but the expanded category sold dungeon claim beacons. Beacon created a public purchase point on an unclaimed core. Any player could spend shop points through the beacon to contribute toward ownership. The highest contributor when the timer ended gained control. Normally, groups used claim beacons after clearing a dungeon. I fired one into the core while Adrian was still capturing it. A golden shop window opened across the inner sky. Dungeon claim contribution available. Every survivor in the river district saw it. Adrian had spent days kidnapping people, releasing prisoners, and trying to consume their homes. I had spent millions discounting their supplies, evacuating their families, and dropping castles into holes. The contribution war lasted 10 seconds. Adrian poured in shop points. I poured in more. Then the city joined. People contributed 1 point, 10 points, whatever they could spare. Workshop apprentices, shelter groups, fighters, vendors, drivers, and survivors who had escaped on glider capes all tapped the same golden butt. The claim total became a tidal wave. My owner dividends returned a percentage of every contributed shop point to me. I spent those dividends back into the beacon. Every point the city contributed increased my ability to contribute again. The loop accelerated. Adrian's millions could not compete with an entire safe zone feeding a shop owner who earned from the feeding. Timer reached 0. Dungeon claim 1. Owner, Cole. The core stopped flattening. Adrian's capture card shattered. The collapsing dungeon paused around us. A control menu appeared. I could stabilize one zone, preserve one resource category, and choose one permanent entrance. I stabilized the swallowed city structures. I preserved crafting materials. I placed the entrance in Paige's workshop. Then I commanded the dungeon to release everything else. The green sky opened. Floating buildings, roads, water, vehicles, and people rose through the riverbed in golden bubbles. The city reassembled imperfectly but safely. A bank landed where a gym had been. 3 apartment buildings returned in reverse order. The supermarket slime reinforcement became part of a fountain. Nobody cared. They were alive. The dungeon core shrank into a green crystal and flew into my warehouse. The owner space grew roots, creating a permanent dungeon district filled with crafting resources and controlled monster zones. Adrian fell with the collapsing island. He used a flight card. I used owner's return. The paper umbrella he had copied earlier was based on my catalog item. Its original purchase pattern belonged to the owner's warehouse. I recalled it. The umbrella vanished from his replayed staircase. His balance broke. He threw another card. I recalled the founder's chair into the air beneath him. Adrian landed in it. The purchase lock activated. He opened the shop while falling and bought the cheapest item. The inner dungeon shop offered 1 item for 1 gold, a bag of marbles. They appeared in his lap. He stood as soon as the purchase completed. I released inventory weather. Rubber boots rained around him. Adrian stepped on the marbles, slipped, and fell through a cloud of boots into Paige's forge net. The net tightened. He replayed a fortress expansion card. I opened the owner's warehouse around him. The fortress expanded inside my storage space, where every registered structure obeyed owner recall. I collapsed it back into a miniature and placed it on a shelf. Adrian replayed a silence wave. The warehouse lights went out. The founder's brick remained a brick. I hit him with it. He flew into Grant's containment cell. Grant had been watching the entire battle through the branch display. He had used the time to purchase snacks, a pillow, 2 escape drills, and a magazine about beginner fishing. Adrian crashed through the display and landed on the floor. Grant attacked him immediately. Adrian had broken him out of jail, used him as bait, abandoned him inside a jellyfish, and left him trapped in my warehouse. Their partnership had reached the honest stage. I let them fight for exactly 4 seconds. Then the warehouse peace field activated and froze both in place. Paige sealed them inside separate containment rooms. Jace arrived through the workshop entrance an hour later with new barrier pylons and a long expression that suggested he had run out of patience several disasters ago. we transferred Adrian and Grant to the dungeon district's deepest fortress. Walls were permanent, the peace field blocked attacks, and the only available shop display sold food, blankets, books, and terrible escape items that moved a prisoner between identical cells. Grant tested all of them. Adrian tested none. He watched me through the barrier and said the city's contribution had revealed my weakness. I depended on customers. If people stopped using the shop, my growth would stop. He was right. He was also standing inside a fortress purchased with money generated by his own shopping habits. I told him customers were not a weakness. They were the reason a shop existed. Jace locked the final gate. For the first time since the apocalypse began, Adrian disappeared from the regional customer ranking. His spending stopped. My income barely changed. The continental network had grown too large. Millions of players bought items every second. New safe zones opened. Towers reached higher floors. Dungeons spread across deserts, mountains, coastlines, and ruined cities. My 18% flowed from all of it. Gold per second passed 50,000. Experience pushed me through level 60 while I helped Paige rebuild the workshop. Shop points accumulated in numbers that no longer looked real. I purchased more ownership. 19%, 20. At 20%, the owner's warehouse gained production echoes. Once per day, I could make one permanent copy of a non-living catalog item without paying stabilization cost. I chose the founder's brick. Warehouse produced a second. The two bricks immediately began orbiting each other like they had been waiting to meet. At 21%, I gained item command. Every sampled object within the owner's market could move according to simple instructions. At 22, structures could combine into mobile forms. At 23, branch displays could connect through gates. At 24, I gained access to continental share offers. At 25, the owner menu stopped calling me minor. Title evolved, principal shop owner. Ownership, 25%. New privilege, category fusion. I could select 2 entire shop categories and create one temporary phenomenon using their combined rules. Weapons plus transportation, potions plus weather. Furniture plus summoning, fortresses plus pets. Paige read the possibilities and slowly sat down. The founder's chair appeared behind her out of habit. She stood immediately. I tested category fusion outside the city, far from anything that could file a complaint. I combined weapons and transportation. Every unused beginner sword in my owner's market transformed into a flying vehicle. Thousands of swords enlarged, grew seats, and shot across the sky like silver motorcycles. I rode one standing backward while founder's bricks circled me. Paige followed on a battle axe with handlebars. Jace refused to participate until we gave his sword vehicle a seat belt. Then I combined potions and weather. Cloud formed over the wasteland and rained healing mist, speed lightning, strength hail, and mana snow. Monsters under the cloud became overpowered for 10 seconds, then slipped on the hail and crashed into each other at boosted speed. I combined furniture and summoning. An army of chairs marched from the warehouse. They did not attack. They simply appeared beneath every creature preparing to leap, land, crouch, or rest. An entire monster herd became seated against its will. I combined fortresses and pets. The pocket castles grew legs, wagging gate tails, and tower ears. They followed me across the field like stone puppies, crushing boulders and barking cannon fire. Paige named the largest one Doorbell. That was not a person's name, so it did not violate the important character limit. Doorbell became the workshop's guard fortress. It slept in the riverbed, chased hostile monsters, and returned carrying pieces of buildings in its gate. The city entered its strongest period yet. The stabilized dungeon produced materials. Paige's workshop created better equipment. Jace's security team used branch gates to respond anywhere in the district. Monster spawn reduction from the tower blessing gave people room to train. I had climbed from the man mocked for buying no weapon to the owner of a quarter of the shop. Most people still did not know that last part. They saw the branch displays and guessed I had a merchant class. They saw the owner's market and assumed it was a domain skill. They saw the item storms and decided not to ask questions. I preferred it that way. The shop's greatest customer had become one of its owners, but I was not yet its secret master. Then the continental event began. At noon, every tower bell rang. The upside-down river froze in the sky. A shadow crossed the continent, so large that daylight vanished for 12 seconds. When the light returned, something was moving above the clouds. A serpent made from mountains and storms circled the horizon. Its scales carried forests. Its breath formed hurricanes. Ancient ruins stood along its spine like small decorations. The system identified it as the world coil. Level unknown. Event duration, 7 days. If the world coil completed one circle around the continent, it would shed its outer scales. Each falling scale would become a disaster zone. Cities beneath them would be buried. The creature was not attacking me. It was following a migration route older than any safe zone. Millions of players looked up. Then they opened the shop. My gold rate increased from 50,000 per second to more than 1 million. Every barrier flying item, resistance potion, whether shield, siege weapon, revival token, and escape tool purchased across the continent paid me. My experience bar became a beam of light. Levels arrived too fast to count. The owner menu displayed a new share offer. 26% cost more gold than I had ever seen. I bought it in 9 seconds. The world coil roared. Mountains shook. The sky shop economy entered the largest buying surge in human history. And I realized the 7-day disaster was not only a threat, it was the greatest business opportunity in the world. The first hour of the World Coil event taught everyone the wrong lesson. The serpent was so large that it barely seemed to move. Its head remained beyond the eastern horizon. Its body curved above the clouds. Its tail crossed mountains hundreds of miles away. People looked up, saw no immediate attack, and assumed we had 7 days to prepare. Then one scale came loose. It was a dark shape no larger than a coin from the ground. As it fell, it grew. Clouds wrapped around it. Lightning spread along its edges. The system estimated impact in 14 minutes. The scale would land 200 miles north of the river district. It was the size of a city. Every player beneath the projected path received an evacuation warning. Roads filled. Teleport items sold out. Flight tools rose in price as demand exploded. My owner income climbed again. I did not celebrate. A market surge was only useful if customers survived long enough to shop tomorrow. I activated every branch gate between the river district and the northern safe zones. Golden doorways opened across workshops, shelters, tower gates, and training grounds. People poured through them. Each gate could move only a limited number before overheating, so I duplicated the gates. At 26% ownership, Structure Echo created temporary copies with 1/4 normal capacity. I did not need full capacity. I needed quantity. 10 gates became 100. 100 became 1,000. Golden doorways filled highways and rooftops. Survivors ran from the impact zone into safe districts across the region. The scale continued falling. Page calculated its path using the forge. Evacuation would save most people, but the impact would still erase farms, water systems, towers, and every remaining shelter in the area. The shock wave would hit us too. I opened category fusion. Transportation plus barriers. Every available vehicle item inside the owner's market transformed into a moving shield. Cars grew barrier plates. Buses unfolded glowing wings. Motorcycles became narrow wedges of force. Flying carpets turned rigid. Beginner sleds expanded into armored ramps. I created an owner's market beneath the falling scale and released inventory rain. Millions of shield vehicles rose from the ground. Players drove them upward. Some were high-level. Most were ordinary survivors who had purchased one movement item and suddenly found themselves piloting part of a continental defense wall. The vehicles connected in the sky. Barrier edges locked together. A silver disc formed beneath the falling scale, wider than a lake. The scale hit. The disc bent. Every connected vehicle screamed through its engine. Players lost mana. Barriers cracked. The descending mountain slowed, but it did not stop. I bought another ownership share while standing on the roof of Doorbell, our giant pet fortress. 27%. New privilege, pooled activation. Inside an owner's market, multiple players could contribute energy to one shop item effect. I placed a gravity anchor at the center of the barrier disc. Then I opened contribution access. Millions of players across the continent saw the anchor in their menus. They could donate 1 point of mana, stamina, or shop energy. The response struck like thunder. The anchor pulled, not downward. I had aimed it sideways toward an empty mountain range. The falling scale changed direction by 1 degree. 1 degree was enough. It scraped across the barrier disc, skipped through the upper atmosphere, and crashed into the mountains instead of the safe zones. The impact split 6 peaks and created a storm visible from the river. But the city survived. Every player who contributed received a small event reward. Many immediately spent it on repairs and recovery. My owner income jumped. Paige looked at the distant mushroom cloud of dust and said we had successfully thrown a mountain at other mountains. I told her the mountains had started it. Then 80 more scales loosened along the world coil's body. The first hour had not been a warning. It had been a sample. The continent erupted into motion. Every safe zone built defenses. Every tower group climbed for stronger items. Every crafter worked without sleep. The shop became the center of survival, and I became the hidden engine beneath the shop. I spent the second day flying across the continent on a sword. Not one sword, a fleet. Weapons plus transportation had created flying blades, axes, spears, and shields. I opened branch gates above major safe zones and released them by the thousands. Players mounted beginner swords like narrow motorcycles. Families rode broad shields. Supply crates traveled on giant axes. Jace commanded rescue routes from the river district using a spear vehicle with 3 bus seats attached. He hated it. He also became extremely good at drifting. Paige connected her forge to Doorbell and transformed the pet fortress into a moving sky dock. Stone legs folded into wings. Towers became engine stacks. Gate opened into the owner's warehouse, allowing sword vehicles to enter, repair, and launch again. We chased the world coil west. The serpent's scales were not falling randomly. Paige found dark marks around each loose scale. Something had burrowed beneath them. The marks pulsed whenever the world coil passed over a city, feeding on fear, mana use, and shop energy released into the air. parasites. The world coil was shedding because storm leeches had nested under its armor. Each leech was larger than a stadium, its body flattened beneath a scale. Its mouth drank energy through thousands of roots. Killing one caused the attached scale to lock back into place. The event could be solved. We only needed to remove several hundred giant parasites from a serpent circling the continent while surviving hurricanes, lightning forests, and gravity strong enough to pull buildings into the sky. Simple, I landed owner's market on the world coil's back. A mile-wide golden ring formed across one scale. Branch displays rose from ancient ruins growing along the serpent's spine. Shop access opened for every player who entered the market. The world coil moved beneath us like a continent breathing. A storm leech emerged from under the next scale. It had a circular mouth filled with blue teeth. Lightning crawled across its transparent body. Dozens of smaller leeches detached and flew toward us. I combined furniture and summoning. The chair army marched from the warehouse. Thousands of chairs ran across the serpent's back on wooden legs. Benches charged in lines. Couches bounced. Folding stools jumped like insects. The smaller leeches dived. Furniture appeared beneath them. Every leech was forced into a seated position in midair. They dropped onto the scale, confused and strangely formal. Page's Forge fired containment cables through the chair backs, connecting the entire swarm into one chain. Doorbell opened its gate and swallowed them into the warehouse dungeon. The giant storm leech screamed and released a hurricane. I fused potions with weather. A golden cloud formed above us. Instead of rain, it released weight potions. Each drop increased the weight of whatever it touched. The hurricane became heavy. Wind dropped out of the air like invisible water and slammed into the scale. The storm leech flattened beneath its own weather. I switched the cloud to bounce potions. The heavy wind hit the ground and bounced upward. The leech launched into the sky. Doorbell jumped after it. A flying fortress the size of a city block caught the parasite in its open gate, closed its walls, and fell back onto the world coil with enough force to crack the scale. The leech survived inside. I marked it with the founder's brick. It bought lightning resistance. Triple dividend received. Page reversed the forge output and filled Doorbell with cold. The leech bought frost resistance. Triple dividend received. I switched to heat. It bought fire resistance. Triple dividend received. We cycled damage types so quickly that the parasite panic bought every resistance potion available. Each purchase fed me. Each potion had a short duration. Once it had spent most of its energy, I stopped changing damage types. The leech relaxed. Then I filled Doorbell with soap. Resistance did nothing against being slippery. The parasite shot through the fortress gate, slid across the world coil's back, and disappeared over the edge. A soared vehicle caught its tail. Thousands of players pulled together using pooled activation. Leech stretched. Page cut its root tendrils with forged shears. The parasite burst into storm crystals. The loose scale sealed itself. One down. Several hundred remained. We needed speed. I opened the Continental Owner Market privilege that had unlocked at 28% during the first day's spending surge. It did not create a market across the whole continent. It linked every active branch display into one shared event for 60 seconds. I announced a leech bounty through the displays. No speech, no politics, just a simple offer. Mark a storm leech with a shop beacon. Receive discounted movement items, resistance potions, and containment tools. Feed it and the branch network would stabilize one permanent item for the group. Players responded instantly. Flying sword fleets rose from cities. Tower groups teleported to the world coil. Crafters built harpoons. Spell users purchased weather protection. Even low-level survivors helped by supplying mana through pooled activations. The serpent's back became a war zone. I moved from scale to scale, not leading an army so much as creating disasters aimed in the correct direction. At one nest, I duplicated umbrellas until they formed a drill, then spun them through the leech's root layer. The umbrellas opened inside its body and carried the parasite into the sky like a terrible parade balloon. At another, I fused food with traps. The shop produced a continent-sized trail of bait snacks leading away from the scale. The leech followed, ate through 6 floating kitchens, and entered a portable dungeon cage disguised as a bakery. One parasite lived beneath an ancient forest on the world coil's spine. Cutting the trees would have destroyed the roots holding the scale. I rained growth potion instead. The forest grew so fast that its roots pushed the leech out from below. Trees launched it into the air, then grew branches around it like a wooden prison. Another leech hid inside a lake carried on the serpent's back. I bought every sponge available in the owner category, echoed them, and absorbed the lake for 10 minutes. The exposed parasite tried to crawl away across dry ground. Page turned the absorbed water into a floating sphere and dropped it on the leech from above. The strangest nest sat beneath a ruined amusement park. The leech had eaten the ride cores and developed spinning armor. Every attack bounced away. I deployed the fortress pets. Hundreds of castle puppies ran across the scale. The leech spun faster, knocking them aside. Doorbell barked cannon fire and charged. I changed the owner market floor to soap. The spinning parasite lost traction and became a wheel. It rolled down the serpent's spine. The fortress pets chased it. Players on sword vehicles joined. Soon thousands of people were pursuing a stadium-sized parasite across a mountain serpent, while castles wagged their gates and fired nets. The leech hit a curve, launched into the air, and crashed through its own nest. We captured it inside a Ferris wheel. By the end of the second day, 100 scales had stabilized. By the third, half the parasites were gone. The world coil still moved. The remaining leeches sensed danger and migrated toward the serpent's head. They gathered around the largest scale beneath its neck, merging their roots into one black mass. The final nest became a parasite city. Hundreds of bodies layered together. Storm energy formed towers. Mouths opened along walls. Lightning bridges connected them. The combined creature covered miles of the world coil. It released a pulse. Every shop item within 50 miles deactivated. Sword vehicles fell. Fortress pets froze. Branch displays went dark. Owner's market vanished. The pulse was not aimed at me. The parasites had evolved by feeding on shop energy from millions of players. Their natural defense disrupted the energy they had consumed. We dropped through the clouds. I could still open the base shop menu, but no activated item remained stable after purchase. Gliders failed. Teleports failed. Flight potions became ordinary liquid. Thousands of players were falling with us, below weighted mountains. I had 3 seconds to invent something that did not depend on active item effects. I bought rope. The rope became ordinary the moment it appeared. Good, ordinary rope still existed. I bought more, then more. At 29% ownership, bulk purchase let me order physical items in industrial quantities. I purchased every coil of rope available in the local category. Millions of miles of rope poured from the shop. No magic, no active effects, just material. I opened the warehouse before the disruption pulse hit again. Rope exploded into the sky. Paige used the forge's mechanical arms to knot lines together. Falling players grabbed whatever passed them. The world became a web. Ropes connected people, sword vehicles, fortress pets, pieces of ruin, and each other. The upper lines caught on the world coil's ancient trees and rock spires. The entire falling army swung beneath the serpent like a gigantic net. We stopped a few 100 feet above the mountains. Then the world coil kept moving. Everyone swung west. For 10 miles, a continent-sized rope web dragged beneath the serpent with thousands of survivors hanging from it. We smashed through clouds, skimmed ridges, and collected several confused flying monsters along the way. Jace was hanging from a rope beside his spear vehicle. He looked at me and asked whether this counted as a rescue. I told him no one had hit the ground. He accepted that as the current standard. Paige climbed the ropes to doorbell and restarted the forge using pure mechanical motion. She had fitted hand cranks for exactly this kind of situation, although I suspected she had simply wanted an excuse to build giant hand cranks. Players across the web turned them together. The forge generated 1 second of stored sound. Paige released it upward. The force launched the web back onto the world coil's spine. We landed outside the parasite city without active items. The combined leeches pulsed again. Shop energy vanished. This time I did not try to resist it. I opened the warehouse and unloaded everything that remained useful without magic. Bricks, chairs, ladders. Rope, hammers, spoons, pans, bicycles. Millions of ordinary objects rolled across the scale. The parasite city had evolved against energy beams, teleportation, barriers, item skills, and shop effects. It had not prepared for construction supplies moving downhill. Players charged behind a wall of furniture. Bricks flew from human hands. Ladders became bridges over lightning cracks. Pans blocked acid rain. Spoons jammed breathing holes. Bicycles carried rope teams around the outer routes. I climbed onto the founder's chair and used 4 people to carry it because the summoning effect was disabled. It was not my most dignified entrance. It was memorable. The first parasite wall opened its mouths. I ordered everyone to throw flour. Thousands of bags burst. White dust covered the storm towers. Lightning ignited it. The explosion came from normal chemistry, not item activation. The wall blew apart. He entered the parasite city carrying the combined power of basic shopping and terrible judgment. The disruption pulses continued, but each one mattered less. Every magical defense the leeches used produced heat, wind, movement, or pressure. Paige captured those physical effects with the forge's mechanical systems. We used pulley lines to redirect them. We built ramps from ladders. We rolled stone blocks on office chairs. We dropped fortress gates by cutting ropes. Battle became a siege from an age before magic, except everyone had inventories full of hardware, and I could buy more every second. At the center of the parasite city, we found the combined heart. It was a black sphere wrapped in roots thicker than towers. Each pulse came from it. The surrounding mouths fed energy inward. The heart had one weakness. It needed shop energy to maintain disruption. Every pulse consumed what the leeches had stored, so I made them spend faster. I marked the outer mouths with the founder's brick between pulses. The brick's magical split failed, but the physical mark remained for a fraction of a second. The creatures received emergency purchase offers whenever our attacks injured them. They bought healing. Triple dividend received. The healing effects failed under their own disruption pulse. They bought again. The heart consumed more energy to block the purchases. Players attacked in waves, parasites panicked, shop offers opened, the heart pulsed, items failed, more energy vanished. I turned the entire battle into a drain. The leeches had built a city from stolen shop power. I made them shop until the lights went out. The pulses weakened, a glider flickered to life, then a barrier. Then the founder's brick split into two, magic returned in fragments. I used the first fragment to open owner's market. Page used the second to activate the forge. Every player on the scale opened the shop at once. The combined heart tried one final disruption pulse. It had to block millions of activations. The stored energy emptied. The black sphere cracked. My owner menu lit up. 30% ownership available. I bought it. New privilege, purchase echo. For every 10 items bought inside my owner's market, one temporary copy appeared in the warehouse. Millions of players were currently buying. The owner's sky filled with items. Potions became stars. Weapons formed silver clouds. Barriers gathered like moons. Movement tools stretched into glowing rivers. The warehouse could not display them on shelves fast enough, so they rose into constellations overhead. I looked at the parasite heart. And I brought the sky down. Purchase Echo released every temporary copy at once. A continent's worth of shop items poured through the owner's market. Weapons struck roots. Potions burst into storms. Barriers slammed into walls. Movement items accelerated everything. Chairs seeded mouths. Bricks became red lightning. Fortress samples unfolded inside parasite towers. Rope tied the entire city together. Page connected the forge to the item's storm and gave it direction. All force turned inward. The parasite city collapsed around the heart. The world coil roared. Its scales flashed from tail to head. The combined leeches tore free in one black mass. I opened the owner's dungeon beneath them. He fell through the gate into an empty resource zone. Doorbell followed. The gate closed. Inside the controlled dungeon, shop disruption meant nothing. The walls were permanent. The peace field did not apply to monsters. Hundreds of fortress pets were waiting. The parasite mass lasted 9 seconds. Storm crystals filled the resource zone. Every remaining scale on the world coil sealed. The shedding stopped. Across the continent, falling scale warnings vanished. The 7-day event cleared on the 3rd day. The world coil continued its migration, no longer losing pieces large enough to erase cities. People celebrated. I was still looking at the owner menu. Defeating the parasite city had generated rewards, purchases, repairs, revivals, and event claims across the entire continent. My gold rate passed 10 million per second. 31% became affordable, then 32, then 33. At 1/3 ownership, every branch display rang. New privilege, grand inventory. I could manifest the owner's warehouse itself for 1 minute. Not a doorway, not selected shelves, the entire pocket world. I stood on the back of a mountain serpent, surrounded by millions of players, and imagined endless golden shelves covering the sky. Then I closed the menu. I did not use the privilege. Not yet, because the world coil lifted its head beyond the western horizon. Something had attached itself beneath its jaw. The parasite city had not been the source. It had been food. A larger creature unfolded from the world coil's throat, made from every storm leech root we had cut away. It had fed in secret while we cleared the scales. Now it carried enough power to leave the serpent. The thing detached, the sky darkened beneath its wings. The system named it the Hollow Star. Its first action was to swallow the sun. The Hollow Star did not actually eat the sun. It wrapped it, black wings stretched across the sky and formed a sphere around the sunlight. Daylight narrowed to a golden ring, then vanished. The continent entered darkness at noon. Temperature dropped. Storm stopped moving. The world coil twisted in the sky as the creature pulled on the roots beneath its jaw. Even detached, the hollow star remained connected by black tendrils. It was using the serpent as an anchor while draining every loose current of energy below. Shop effects began failing across the continent, not disappearing completely, weakening. A purchased torch produced half its normal light. A barrier lasted half as long. Flight items lost height. Potions restored less. Stolen energy flowed upward into the hollow star's body. Millions of players panicked and bought stronger items. The creature grew. Its wings expanded beyond the horizon. New mouths opened along its underside. Each one drank a different kind of energy: heat, light, mana, movement, sound, and the golden glow released whenever a shop item activated. Adrian had warned me that customers were my weakness. He had been wrong about the reason. My weakness was not that I depended on people buying. My weakness was that I had trained myself to answer every problem by making them buy more. Hollow Star turned that habit against me. My income surged beyond anything I had imagined. Gold poured into the owner menu. Experience lifted me through level 70, 80, 90. Shop points became an endless line. At the same time, every purchase fed the thing covering the sun. I could become richer while the continent died. That was not ownership. That was being a parasite with better furniture. I activated every branch display and sent one instruction: stop buying. For 60 seconds, use what I give you. Then I opened grand inventory. The owner's warehouse manifested across the sky. Golden shelves appeared from horizon to horizon. They did not replace the world. They unfolded above it, transparent and enormous, like a second continent made from light. Item districts floated between constellations. Ocean stars moved in colorful rivers. Weapon clouds turned slowly around fortress moons. The controlled dungeon hung at the center as a green crystal world. Every branch gate opened directly into the grand inventory. No purchase required. Players reached through displays and took temporary items already stored from Purchase Echo. Potions flowed from the sky. Barriers descended. Movement tools relit. The items had been created before the hollow star formed, so their activation released less new shop energy. The creature's growth slowed. I bought shares while the continent used my stored inventory. 34%, 35, 36. The crisis purchases from the first minutes had given me enough gold to climb quickly. At 37%, grand inventory duration doubled. At 38, branch gates no longer overheated inside an owner event. At 39, temporary items could be recalled and reused once. At 40%, I gained catalog command. Every temporary shop item inside grand inventory could receive one movement order from me. I looked up at the golden warehouse sky. And I gave the order. Rise. Every sword, shield, potion, chair, rope, ladder, vehicle, fortress, umbrella, brick, tool, and piece of equipment lifted from the shelves. The inventory became an army, not a neat army. Neatness had never been my strength. Sword vehicles formed silver rivers. Shields became rotating walls. Potion bottles gathered into glowing whales. Chairs marched on air. Ladders linked into towers. Ropes braided themselves into cables wider than streets. Fortress pets ran across nothing, barking cannon fire at the dark. The founder's bricks flew to me. There were now 7 permanent copies. Production Echo had created one each day, and repeated combat had upgraded the whole set. They orbited my body in a red-gold ring. I stood on Doorbell's highest tower, while the flying fortress climbed toward the hollow star. Paige connected her forge to grand inventory. The small portable machine had grown from repeated upgrades. 6 arms had become 30. Rune plates circled it like mechanical wings. The silence engine pulsed at its center. Jace took command of evacuation and defense below. He did not need me to tell him how. Branch gates moved people underground. Barrier vehicles covered shelters. The controlled dungeon opened safe chambers. For the first time, the city could survive without waiting for me to solve every street-level problem. That meant I could go upward and do something unreasonable. Doorbell flew through frozen clouds. The hollow star noticed grand inventory. Every mouth turned toward us. It saw more shop energy in my warehouse sky than existed anywhere else on the continent. The creature released the world coil and dived. That was what I wanted. It believed the inventory was food. I made it look delicious. Potions plus weather created a spiral of glowing clouds. Weapons plus transportation formed silver schools of flying blades. Food plus summoning produced giant golden fruit that ran on tiny legs. Furniture plus gravity built a ring of couches so heavy they bent the clouds downward. The hollow star opened its central mouth. Darkness pulled at everything. I ordered the inventory army forward. Millions of temporary items entered the mouth. The creature swallowed sword rivers, potion whales, fortress pets, rope cables, barrier moons, and enough chairs to seat a nation. Its body expanded around the flood. Energy lines brightened under its skin. It began digesting the items, then I recalled them. At 39% ownership, temporary items could return once. The entire swallowed inventory reversed direction. Swords cut outward, shields expanded, ropes pulled, ladders unfolded. Chairs appeared beneath internal joints. Potions burst against the flow. Fortresses opened inside the creature's wings. The hollow star inflated like a black balloon full of buildings. It did not break. The parasites that formed it had learned from the pocket fortress trick. Internal layers shifted, creating empty chambers around every expanding structure. Mouths separated. Roots rerouted energy. The creature converted damage into more space. Clever, I respected it. Then it bit Doorbell in half. The fortress pet's front towers vanished into darkness. Paige and I fell from the broken battlement. The forge fired cables into a wing, but the hollow star dissolved them into black sparks. I merchant stepped to a display rack floating nearby. Paige landed on a sword vehicle. Doorbell's rear half remained alive in the magical fortress sense. Its gate wagged weakly. The creature tried to swallow the rest. I combined fortresses with consumables. Every fortress sample became a single-use item. That sounded like a downgrade until I activated Doorbell. The fortress pet vanished from the hollow star's mouth and reappeared as a tiny capsule in my hand. I threw it. Doorbell expanded at full speed directly above the creature's head, complete again because consumable activation restored the sample pattern. Stone paws struck black wings. Cannons fired. The gate opened and bit one of the hollow star's mouths. Hollow Star answered by releasing stolen energy. A beam wider than a city cut through grand inventory. Shelves vanished. Item constellations broke. The beam continued downward toward the river district. I moved the controlled dungeon into its path. The green crystal world opened like a shield. The beam entered a monster zone, traveled through hundreds of empty caverns, and exited from a branch gate I placed behind the hollow star. The creature blasted itself. Black wings burned. A section of sunlight escaped through the gap. The continent saw one golden ray. Players cheered. Then the hollow star closed around the sun again and released thousands of smaller bodies. Each fragment had wings, mouths, and one glowing root. They fell toward every major safe zone. The parent creature was dividing its appetite. Jace called from below. The branch defenses could handle some fragments, not thousands. I was still at 40% ownership. The share price had risen beyond even my current gold. I needed another surge of value without feeding the hollow star, so I changed what counted as value. The owner menu awarded experience and shop points from purchases, but gold was only one path to additional ownership. At principal owner status, I could pay share costs using equivalent stabilized catalog value. I had ignored that option because sacrificing permanent items felt wasteful. Now I opened the owner's warehouse and looked at everything we had built. Pocket fortresses, the second founder's brick. Rare tower materials, storm crystals, the dungeon crafting stockpile, Adrian's captured fortress cards stored on a shelf, thousands of stabilized tools created by Page's workshop. I did not sacrifice the things people needed. I sacrificed the trophies, boss cores I had kept because they looked impressive, legendary weapons no one could safely use, rare decorations from tower floors, a floating throne I had thrown away during the silent collector battle. A collection of glowing gems Grant had insisted were priceless before they trapped him in a class trial. The owner menu converted all of it into share value, 41%, 42, 43. Warehouse shelves emptied behind me. Paige saw what I was doing and opened her private storage. She added prototype machines, failed devices, and valuable materials she had been saving for later. I refused the forge. She added everything else, 44%. Jace captured monster cores from the security vault through a branch gate. The city workshops followed. Players across the continent saw the share contribution option through Grand Inventory and began adding useless rare items from their own storage. A jeweled helmet that screamed at night, a sword that only cut fruit. Boots that teleported 1 foot backward, a cursed painting that insulted the owner. Millions of valuable, impractical objects flowed into the warehouse. The shop converted them, 45%, 46. The hollow star fragments approached the cities. I unlocked mass catalog command at 46%. Temporary items could receive continuous orders instead of one movement. I ordered every flying sword vehicle to intercept. Silver fleets crossed the continent. Shields formed nets. Rope constellations wrapped fragments. Potion clouds blinded mouths. Fortress pets leaped from branch gates and dragged black bodies into controlled dungeon zones. The fragments fought back. They swallowed items and grew. I ordered the items to transform. Category fusion changed transportation into traps. Sword vehicles folded around the fragments. Shield nets became containment cages. Glider capes wrapped wings. Teleport tags activated in chains and moved trapped fragments directly into the dungeon. Hollow Star parent screamed. Its body opened. A black tongue wrapped around Grand Inventory itself. The creature began pulling the owner's warehouse from the sky. Shelves tilted. Dungeon gates shook. Branch displays bent upward across the continent. The Hollow Star was trying to swallow the source instead of the items. That could destroy the pocket world and everything stored inside. I closed Grand Inventory. Manifestation resisted. The creature's tongue had crossed the boundary and anchored itself among the shelves. I entered the warehouse. Paige followed before I could stop her. Inside, the sky was black. Hollow Star's tongue stretched from horizon to horizon, wrapped around item constellations and fortress districts. Mouths opened along its surface, eating temporary samples. Every bite removed another shelf. The controlled dungeon shook at the center. Grant and Adrian's fortress prison sat inside one of the protected zones. The barrier remained active, but cracks spread through the outer walls. Adrian finally opened the prison shop. His first purchase in days appeared in my owner statistics. One information candle. The item revealed the strongest nearby energy direction. He lit it inside his cell. The flame pointed not toward the Hollow Star, not toward the dungeon core, but toward me. Adrian looked through the barrier and understood how much ownership I had gained. 46% rings circled my menu like a small sun. He had spent millions trying to become the system shop's greatest customer. I had used his spending, the continent's purchases, and every ridiculous item in my catalog to become almost half its owner. He started laughing. Grant asked what was funny. Adrian told him the weakest man in the subway had bought the world's best weapon for 1 coin. That was the first accurate thing Adrian had said about me. The Hollow Star's tongue struck the prison zone. Walls split. Jace's barriers held for 1 second, then failed. Grant charged toward the opening. I expected him to escape. Instead, he punched the tongue. The black flesh had swallowed half his crystal class power during the dungeon disaster. Grant hated Adrian, hated me, hated jail, and hated being eaten most of all. For once, his priorities aligned with ours. His punch stopped the tongue long enough for Paige to move the prison zone deeper into the dungeon. Grant shouted that this did not make us friends. I told him I would note that while locking the next door. He hit the tongue harder. Adrian remained inside his cell. He held the information candle and watched the flame. And he bought one more item, a blank capture card. He pressed it against the barrier and stored the moment Grant's punch stopped the tongue. He slid the completed card under the door toward me. I did not trust him. I also did not have time to reject useful ammunition because it came from a terrible person. I took the card. Dividend received. The hollow star pulled again. Warehouse sky tore open. I threw Adrian's card. Grant's punch replayed at continental scale because the captured action was amplified by Grand Inventory's owner field. A crystal fist larger than a mountain struck the tongue. Black root snapped. The hollow star lost its anchor. I closed the warehouse. Grand Inventory vanished from the real sky, leaving the creature biting empty air. Sunlight escaped around its wings again. Smaller fragments below weakened as their connection broke. Players captured hundreds more. The share contribution continued inside the owner menu. 47%, 48, 49. At 49%, the gold rings around my menu merged into one solid circle. New privilege, owner's claim. Once per day, I could mark one hostile non-player creature inside my owner's market as a premium customer. For 1 minute, every damage type it received would trigger an immediate defensive shop offer. Accepted purchases would be drawn from the creature's stored energy at maximum available price. Refused purchases would increase the next incoming damage. The privilege was designed for powerful merchants defending shop zones against monsters. It might as well have been designed for me. I reopened owner's market around the hollow star. Then I threw all 7 founders' bricks. They struck 7 mouths and linked their marks. Premium customer designated. The hollow star received its first offer. Solar resistance. It accepted. The cost consumed enough stored energy to relight an entire city. 49% owner dividend received. My gold jumped. I directed one ray of sunlight through the gap in its wings. The creature received another solar resistance offer at a higher price. It accepted. I changed damage types. Page fired cold from the forge. Frost resistance purchased. Doorbell launched burning meteors. Fire resistance purchased. Sword fleet struck with physical force. Impact resistance purchased. Ocean Wither released acid, lightning, sleep mist, gravity hail, and one hairgrowth formula that had somehow survived every catalog cleanup. The hollow star purchased protection against all of them. Its black surface grew long golden hair. That did not help the battle, but it made the end of the world slightly less depressing. Every purchase drained stored power. Every purchase paid me 49%. Every payment pushed me toward the next share. Hollow Star understood too late. It began refusing offers. Refused purchase penalty accumulated. Page struck it with the forge beam. The damage multiplied. A wing tore open. Sunlight flooded through. The creature received a revival protection offer. Refused, I hit it with the founder's bricks. The penalty multiplied again. Doorbell bit through a mouth. The hollow star refused every emergency purchase, trying to save its remaining energy. That was the second trap. I did not need it to keep buying defenses. I needed it to refuse enough times that one final attack became impossible to survive. The creature folded its wings and dived toward me. It had identified the owner rings as the center of the market. Every mouth opened. Black roots formed spears. The hollow star stopped attacking cities, ignored the world coil, and focused entirely on killing me. I stood on the founder's chair floating in the sky. No fortress, no barrier, no weapon in my hands. The continent watched the monster descend. Page understood my expression and moved Doorbell away. Hollow Star believed I had run out of tricks. That was reasonable. I had sacrificed my trophies, emptied my warehouse, recalled Grand Inventory, and spent almost every available shop point. The creature crossed the final mile. I sat down. The founder's chair recognized a seated owner preparing to receive a hostile landing. At 49% ownership, its evolved effect had changed. It no longer appeared only beneath crouching enemies. Could designate an entire contact surface as furniture. I designated the sky. The air beneath the hollow star became a chair. The creature landed. For one impossible second, the winged black monster that had covered the sun was seated across the atmosphere. Purchase lock activated. To stand, it had to complete one shop transaction. The hollow star tried to refuse. The chair held. It tried to attack. Owner's market classified the movement as attempting to leave the seat. Lock tightened. It opened the shop. The cheapest available item in the premium category was not a bag of marbles. It was a full energy revival token. Price, everything the customer could afford. Hollow Star purchased it. 49% dividend received. My gold crossed the threshold. I bought the 50th percent. Ownership 50%. The owner menu paused. Equal ownership status achieved. Additional share available through owner value only. Gold could not buy 51. I needed to contribute something the shop recognized as greater than money. The hollow star broke free from the chair and lunged. I looked at the owner's warehouse. One permanent item remained on the first shelf. The original founder's brick. It had been my first weapon, my first sample, my first ridiculous victory. Every upgrade, every return, every marked customer, and every impossible combo had grown from that one red block. Its owner value was enormous. I recalled it to my hand. The hollow stars' mouths closed around me. I offered the brick for the final share. The shop accepted. The founder's brick dissolved into red gold light. Ownership 51%. Title evolved. Majority shop owner. New privilege. Owner's choice. Once per major owner event, I could select one complete category in my catalog and apply its purpose to every temporary shop item inside my market. Not its shape, its purpose. I chose containment. Every item in the sky changed purpose. Swords no longer cut, they pinned. Shields no longer blocked, they enclosed. Ropes no longer tied, they sealed. Oceans no longer healed, they stabilized. Fortresses no longer defended, they imprisoned. Chairs no longer seated, they became cells. The hollow star swallowed me. Then every shop item it had eaten since the battle began activated at once. Inside its body, millions of temporary objects transformed into containment devices. Sword rivers pinned roots, shield moons closed around hearts, rope constellations sealed mouths, fortress samples unfolded as prison walls. Ocean stabilized the black flesh so it could not split or escape. The creature became its own cage. I merchant stepped out through a branch display trapped inside one of its mouths. From outside, the hollow star folded inward. Wings wrapped around wings, mouths closed on mouths, roots tied themselves. The entire monster compressed into a black sphere surrounded by golden shop rings. Its revival token activated, the sphere restored to full condition. Containment restored with it. The token had revived the prison too. That was the final sale. I opened the controlled dungeon beneath the sphere. Doorbell kicked it through the gate. Hollow Star fell into the deepest empty zone, where the world coil parasites had become piles of storm crystals. Fortress walls rose around it. Owner's choice sealed every exit. The dungeon core changed the zone's purpose from resource field to permanent containment. Gate closed, the black sphere remained alive, stable, and completely unable to feed. Above us, its wings vanished from the sun. Daylight returned across the continent. The world coil roared once, not in pain, but relief. The last black root slipped from its jaw. Its migration path curved away from populated areas and toward the empty western ocean. The serpent crossed the horizon without shedding another scale. The event ended. I floated over the clouds with 51% ownership and no original founder's brick. For the first time since the subway, my hand felt empty. Then 7 red gold lights circled me. Permanent echo copies remained. They were not the original. They did not need to be. One brick flew into my hand. The catalog updated its name. Successor's brick. I threw it at Doorbell's gate. Bounced back perfectly. I smiled. Returning to the river district took longer than defeating the hollow star, not because the distance was great, because everyone kept stopping us. Sword vehicles filled the sky. Players flew beside Doorbell, stood on shields, hung from rope gliders, and rode axes with seats attached. Some carried injured friends. Some carried monster cores. Some carried pieces of broken scale, because survival events had not improved anyone's instinct to pick up dangerous glowing objects. They cheered when the sun returned. They cheered louder when Doorbell limped through the clouds with half its towers smoking. Then they saw me standing on the gate with 7 successors' bricks orbiting my head. Nobody cheered for a second. The brick storm had developed a reputation. I lowered them. The cheering resumed. We crossed the city at sunset. The upside-down river still curved through the sky, frozen into a shining road by the world coil's passing. Buildings remained out of place from the dungeon seed disaster. Fortress plugs stuck from streets. A castle tower leaned out of the hospital roof. The bank and gym had somehow merged into one building where people could lift weights while checking their storage balances. It was ugly, it was alive. Jace landed first on his spear vehicle, stepped off, and declared that he would never ride a weapon again. The spear rolled forward and followed him like a loyal motorcycle. He ignored it. Paige brought Doorbell down in the riverbed. The pet fortress curled around the workshop and fell asleep. Its cannons lowered. Its gate gave one tired wag. The city gathered around us. He wanted a speech. I had none. I opened Owner's Market instead. Golden displays rose across the district. For 1 hour, repair materials, food, water, medicine, basic weapons, and shelter items cost almost nothing. I covered the difference with my world coil earnings. People shopped. Of course they did. Transaction volume surged. 51% of the eligible value flowed back to me. The discount was so large that I lost gold on individual items, but the owner bonuses, shop points, repair activity, and new branch connections balanced the cost. More importantly, everyone received what they needed. Paige bought a replacement forge arm. Jace bought windows for the security bus. Someone bought 300 traffic cones, which made me proud for reasons I could not explain. The city rebuilt through the night. I used category fusion on structures and tools. Hammers grew legs and repaired walls. Ladders marched between rooftops. Paintbrushes flew over damaged buildings. Construction carts became small moving workshops. Fortress pets carried entire floors into place. I combined transportation with furniture and created flying moving vans made from couches. Families loaded their belongings, sat down, and floated toward new shelters in complete comfort. I combined potions with plumbing. Water system filled itself with purification effects. Every fountain in the district released healing mist for 1 hour. Grant complained from prison because the mist did not reach his cell. I opened a branch display for him. He bought bottled water. Dividend received. Adrian bought nothing. The new prison sat inside the controlled dungeon, far below the workshop. It had permanent fortress walls, peace fields, containment layers, and branch gates controlled only by Jace. The shop display offered food, books, hygiene items, exercise equipment, and safe entertainment. Grant tested the escape category every morning. The available products remained terrible. One item moved him from the left side of his cell to the right. One disguised him as a lamp, but the cell contained no other lamps. One created a tunnel exactly 6 inches deep. One summoned a guard to explain why escape was not allowed. Grant purchased all of them. He became a top 10 customer inside the dungeon. Adrian sat across the hall and studied the barrier patterns without touching the shop. He understood that every purchase gave me information about the category and value. He refused to contribute. That lasted 4 days. Then he bought a strategy board. 51% dividend received. The board appeared in his cell with black and white pieces. He arranged them into a model of the World Coil battle. He placed one piece where the hollow star had swallowed grand inventory, another where I had reached 49%. Then he placed a final piece outside the board. I watched through the prison display. Adrian looked directly at the crystal and moved the outside piece farther away. He was reminding me that the next threat might not appear where I controlled the market. I knew that. I also knew he had finally bought something. I sent him a receipt bell that rang once in celebration. He broke it. The replacement cost came from his balance. Dividend received. Grant laughed for an hour. With the world coil gone, the continent entered a recovery period. Towers remained. Dungeons remained. Monsters still appeared. The apocalypse had not ended because we defeated one giant creature, but survival had changed. At the subway station, every person had been alone with 1 coin in 60 seconds. Now branch gates connected safe zones across the continent. Workshops shared materials. Rescue groups used sword fleets. Dungeon entrances had mapped routes. Jace's teams taught people how to capture violent players without killing them. Page's forged designs spread through branch displays. The shop was no longer only a panic button. It had become infrastructure, and I owned 51%. No announcement revealed that fact. The owner title remained private because I kept it private. People knew I controlled branch displays and inventory storms. They knew I could create castles, potion weather, flying furniture, and enough bricks to alter local climate. They did not know that whenever anyone bought a weapon, potion, class upgrade, repair, revival, meal, rope, spoon, or emergency brick, part of the value came to me. Secret made every ordinary moment ridiculous. I would walk through the workshop and gain a level because a distant tower team completed a class upgrade. I would be eating lunch and receive enough gold to buy a building because a coastal city purchased hurricane barriers. I would fall asleep at level 110 and wake at 117 because people on the other side of the continent discovered a poison swamp and became excellent antidote customers. My shop points regenerated faster than I could spend them, so I spent them badly. I stabilized 1 million founder-style bricks and stored them in a red continent inside the warehouse. Paige asked why. I told her preparation. She asked for what? I told her something deserving. I created a potion ocean in the dungeon. Each section had a different effect. Healing waves rolled against stamina beaches. Mana currents flowed under frost-resistance ice. One small bay contained the hair growth formula because I could not remove it without destroying the whole fusion pattern. Doorbell swam there once. It returned covered in stone moss that looked like fur. Fortress pets loved the controlled dungeon. They chased training monsters, carried resources, and slept around the Hollow Star's containment zone. The black sphere remained sealed beneath layers of owner's choice. It stored energy slowly converted into storm crystals, which Paige used to power defenses. The creature that had covered the sun became a battery for streetlights. That felt fair. I also improved the branch displays. Every safe zone received an emergency free shelf stocked from Purchase Echo. The items were temporary, limited, and impossible to hoard, but enough to protect people during the first minutes of an attack. Nobody would stand weaponless with 1 coin unless they chose to buy a store again. I checked the ownership menu every day. 52% remained unavailable. The shop recognized me as majority owner, but additional shares required a new form of value labeled network expansion credit. No one had earned it yet. That was fine. I had more than enough power to use. At 51%, owner's choice changed combat completely. A pack of volcanic worms emerged near the northern mountains. I opened owner's market, filled the sky with healing potions, and changed their purpose to excavation. Every potion became a drilling charge. The worms found themselves being mined by medicine. A flying nest appeared above a coastal safe zone. I filled the air with umbrellas, changed their purpose to transportation, and carried the entire nest to an empty island. Monsters woke up surrounded by beach chairs. An evil scavenger gang began ambushing supply groups between branch gates. They believed I was too busy managing continental repairs to notice. I noticed their purchases. We bought concealment items, poison coatings, restraint chains, and storage expansions in the same pattern before every attack. I mapped the transactions and placed a fake supply convoy on their route. The convoy carried glowing crates marked high-grade revival stones. The crates actually contained stabilized flour, rubber hammers, and containment foam. The gang attacked. I let them open every crate. Flour filled the canyon. Their own fire skills ignited it. Rubber hammers launched from the explosion. Containment foam expanded around the walls. When the smoke cleared, every attacker was stuck inside a giant white sculpture shaped like surprise. Jace arrived on the security bus. He had added the new windows. The bus loaded the foam block hole and drove it into the dungeon jail. No speech, no chase, no dramatic duel. They had chosen to attack a weak-looking convoy and purchase their own route to prison. My reputation grew stranger. People stopped saying that attacking me caused money to vanish. They started saying that evil intentions activated furniture. That was close enough. Paige's workshop became the largest crafting center on the continent. She refused every ceremonial position people offered and kept working beside the same portable forge, although it now occupied most of a warehouse and had enough arms to build a bridge while preparing lunch. Jace expanded the security routes but continued driving the original bus. It had survived the subway district, the jail collapse, the dungeon ocean, the ropeweb flight, and the World Coil event. The bus had reached level 40 through repeated upgrades. Its class evolved into municipal siege transport. Jace stared at the notification for a long time. Then he bought it a stronger horn. Dividend received. Grant settled into a routine of training, complaining, buying escape tools, and being moved between identical cells. His crystal class stabilized after Paige removed the storm energy Adrian had forced into it. He remained loud, dangerous, and permanently separated from people he could bully. Adrian became quiet. He studied maps, event records, and shop patterns. He never apologized. He never pretended to become good. I preferred that honesty to a sudden, dramatic change. He had lost because he treated people as disposable. I had won because people chose to contribute when the dungeon core opened, and because millions trusted my branch displays during the Hollow Star event. Cleverness had carried me far. Power had carried me farther. But neither would have reached 51% without customers who believed I would use ownership to keep the shop open for them. I understood that now. I also understood something less noble. Being trusted gave me access to truly absurd quantities of bricks. Months passed. The world did not return to normal. Normal had become a subway memory. Instead, safe zones expanded. Tower routes opened. Controlled dungeons produced resources. Players reached classes powerful enough to reshape weather and move mountains. The shop transaction rate continued rising. New customers joined every day. Children who had been too young to receive menus awakened beginner access when they reached the system's minimum age. Isolated regions connected their networks. Ships crossed monster oceans using barrier sails. Flying cities appeared around high towers. Every connection increased my dividends. I used the income to buy permanent emergency stock, stabilize branch gates, and build a second owner warehouse district made entirely from jokes that had become weapons. The emergency brick factory stood beside the chair barracks. The Spoon Observatory tracked metal monsters. The Umbrella Port launched weather teams. The mattress field served as a landing zone for anything larger than good judgment. At the center stood a small display case. It was empty. That was where the original founder's brick had rested. I did not replace it. The empty space reminded me that ownership had a cost beyond gold. One coin purchase had looked like a glitch, a free advantage, a mistake in the menu. It had not been free. I had paid with every choice afterward. I had chosen to protect customers instead of draining them. I had chosen to spend gold during evacuations. I had sacrificed rare items, trophies, and finally the first weapon that had carried me from the subway. The shop share gave me power. What I did with it made me the owner. Then one morning, every branch display in the world rang. Not the continent, the world. A new network connection appeared in the owner menu. Global shop synchronization complete. Eligible customers expanded. Gold per second multiplied so quickly that the counter became a golden sun. My experience level increased 11 times before I finished reading. The global customer ranking opened. I expected to see myself near the top. I was ranked 2. Someone across the ocean had spent more than Adrian, more than me, and more than entire safe zones combined. The customer had purchased one item. Planet Gate Ignition Key. The cost used a currency I had never seen. Astral Coins. The purchase generated my first network expansion credit. The owner menu flashed. Additional share available, 52%. Price 1 Astral Coin. I had none. Then the sky above the Western Ocean opened into a blue circle. Not a tower, not another warning message. A gate. Through it, I saw another land beneath a purple sun. Flying machines crossed between black mountains. A city floated upside down above an endless forest. Far in the distance, something the size of a moon moved behind the clouds. The shop connected to millions of new customers. My branch display showed categories I had never imagined: starship parts, gravity oceans, living fortresses, planet-class containment, a chair designed for giants. Paige walked up beside me and stared at the gate. Jace arrived in the security bus, saw the new world, and immediately said the bus was not going through. The bus opened its own branch route and rolled forward without him. Grant began shouting from the dungeon because the prison shop had added astral escape items. Adrian bought a second strategy board. Dividend received. I opened the owner's warehouse. 1,000,000 successors bricks rose from the red continent. Fortress pets woke across the dungeon. Sword vehicles filled the sky. Ocean clouds formed over the workshop. The founder's chair floated behind me, ready for the first enemy foolish enough to crouch. I had started with 1 coin, no weapon, and a gray menu everyone else ignored. Now every player's purchase made me stronger. Every disaster created customers. Every customer built my inventory, and more than half of the greatest shop in the world belonged to me. The planet gate widened. Notification appeared. A premium customer on the other side had purchased 1 million revival tokens. 51% owner dividend received. I smiled. Whoever they were, they had either found an impossible battle or planned to become one. Both possibilities sounded profitable. I stepped onto a flying sword. Paige's forge unfolded behind me. Doorbell climbed from the riverbed. Jace chased his bus while insisting this was not approval. 7 successors bricks circled my shoulders, and 1,000,000 more waited inside the warehouse. Everyone had bought weapons. I had bought 1% of the shop. Then I collected the fees until the shop was mine. And on the other side of that gate, someone had just become my newest customer.